Chapter 253. Xiaoya thought that the swordsman's bedroom would be very luxurious, but she realized that the bedroom's decoration was quite simple. There was only a bed, a table, and a computer. But very soon, Xiaoya discovered something interesting. There was actually a coffin placed on the bed of this sword wielder. Xiaoya walked closer and realized that it was not a coffin, but a medical pod. Through the glass outside the medical pod, Xiaoya could see a little girl who was at most 7 or 8 years old. Her eyes were closed, and she was lying in the medical pod. She did not know if she was dead or alive. Xiaoya looked around the medical pod carefully. She realized that other than the girl's name, Gu Yun, and the fact that she had been treated for 37 hours, there was no other data. Xiaoya did not dare to touch the medical pod's controller. If something went wrong, not only would she be in trouble, even her mother, when Maiden, would be in trouble. Why is there a medical pod in the swordsman's bedroom? And there's a little girl in it? Xiaoya scratched her head in confusion. If she's sick, she can be sent to the hospital. The swordsman will not be short of money. I don't understand. Could it be that this swordsman is a lolicon? Xiaoya immediately began to imagine. If he's a lolicon, then it makes sense. This swordsman must have secretly kidnapped a loli and kept her at home. That's why he doesn't dare to send her to the hospital. That must be it. I'm too smart. Wait, if this swordsman likes lolis. Xiaoya quickly ran to the mirror and spun around in front of it. She said to herself, I'm more or less a loli. I'm only 14 years old today. To be honest, Xiaoya was indeed 14 years old. However, Chinese people always counted their age, so Xiaoya should be 15 years old. Moreover, Xiaoya's figure was definitely one of the more mature ones among her peers. Whether it was her height or her 3 dimensions, she was already close to an adult woman. The only thing that could be considered a loli was her apple-like face. Putting aside her figure and just looking at her face, Xiaoya did meet the criteria of a loli. Xiaoya spun a few rounds in front of the mirror, intoxicated with herself. Then, her leg bumped into the computer table behind her. After receiving a jolt, the computer monitor instantly lit up. Guhan didn't even turn off his computer before leaving the room. The monitor that suddenly lit up caught Xiaoya's curiosity. She moved closer to the desktop of the computer and took a look. She realized that the browser was still running in the background and hadn't been closed. Xiaoya held onto the mouse and gently clicked on the browser at the bottom of the desktop. Then, a page instantly occupied the entire monitor screen. Xiaoya recognized it at a glance. This page was the official forum page of Sword Maiden Online. At the top was the King Arthur's Betrayal dungeon guide post. I wonder what level this sword wielder is at in the game. I also want to reach 18 so that I can play the game. Xiaoya thought sadly. There was nothing interesting on this page, and Xiaoya did not dare to open any pages. This was because the browsing history would record the pages she clicked. If the sword wielder found out that she had looked at his computer, she would be done for. Therefore, Xiaoya wanted to minimize the computer's browser again and wait for the monitor to automatically enter standby mode. However, when Xiaoya's mouse moved to the bottom of the screen, a user welcome bar at the bottom of the page suddenly attracted Xiaoya's attention. Military Governor 12580, welcome to the forum. Just these few words almost made Xiaoya lose her ability to breathe. Oh my god, this login account is actually Military Governor 12580. What does this mean? This means that Mother's Master is the super player, Military Governor, who made the entire game crazy. Although Xiaoya had never entered the game, it didn't mean that she couldn't enter the game forum. Moreover, in Xiaoya's class, for an entire week, everyone, regardless of gender, only talked about one person, and that was the mysterious player, Military Governor. The Military Governor's various shocking deeds in the game, such as the feat of first clearing King Arthur's betrayal, had already broken the legend of Kanglan Billows being undefeatable, and all these made the Military Governor the center of everyone's discussion. Many of the male students in the class boasted shamelessly that surpassing the military governor was their goal. And the girls, on the other hand, saw the military governor as their dream lover. Especially when they saw the few scars on the military governor's face during the interview, they fell even more in love with him. "This is a scar that only a strong man can have. These scars are going to kill my heart." Discussions like these were everywhere, showing how popular the military governor was among the girls in their class. It was said that the daughter of the famous sword wielder in their class, a girl who was treated like a princess, had tipped the military governor a whopping 58,888 renminbi. When Maiden would never know that her own daughter, Xiaoya, had desperately saved 50 renminbi from her pitiful living expenses and tipped it to the military governor. Because of this 50 renminbi, Xiaoya ate nutrient solutions for 3 whole days, and she became a lot more haggard. Actually, Xiaoya didn't have much love for the military governor. She didn't like men with scars on their faces, but all the girls in the class had tipped him. If Xiaoya didn't tip him, she felt that she might as well die. From this, it could be seen that comparing with each other was really harmful behavior. But Xiaoya had imagined the true appearance of the military governor many times, where he was from, how old he was, what his personality was like, and what his family was like. In Xiaoya's imagination, a strong man like the military governor must be the son of some aristocratic family. He was an existence that she yearned for but couldn't reach. He was someone that she could only learn about from forums and the internet, and would never be able to meet in person. But Xiaoya never imagined that this military governor was actually her mother's master. Didn't this mean that the military governor was also half her master? This feeling was like a neighbor suddenly moving in next door, and upon closer inspection, this neighbor was actually Wang Xikong. "I'm going to tell this news to the girls in the class. They will definitely be so jealous of me. Even that little bitch Wang Yuan asked me to bring her to meet the military governor." She tipped the military governor almost 60,000 renminbi. She must really like the military governor. For the military governor, she might even kneel in front of me. This was Xiaoya's initial thought. She fantasized that she could rely on the identity of the military governor to become the new queen of the class, the center of everyone, and the idol. But after this brief fantasy, Xiaoya immediately gave up on this thought. "No, this is my secret. How can I tell other girls? This is a secret that only I can have. And I heard that the players in the game don't want to reveal their identity in real life. If I tell others, what if the military governor mistreats my mother out of anger? No, I can't tell others this secret." Xiaoya still had some intelligence. Although Gohan's personality was slowly coming out of the darkness, if this secret was exposed, Gohan would definitely not pity Wen Meiyun. Gohan would definitely let Wen Meiyun and her mother know the meaning of fear. But, keeping such a big secret in my heart, I feel uncomfortable if I don't tell others. Xiaoya thought uncomfortably. I heard from my mother that this military governor only became an ancient sword wielder about a week ago, which basically coincides with the time he entered the game. This is a stock with potential. With the military governor's ability, no matter in real life or in the game, he will definitely become strong in the end. It's possible for him to surpass Wang Yuan's father, that famous sword wielder, and become a spiritual sword wielder. Oh my God, a spiritual sword wielder! Xiaoya had heard about spiritual sword wielder before. Legend had it that they each lived in a mansion that was thousands of square meters and enjoyed a life of dozens or even hundreds of people serving them. They had uncountable wealth, and their wives and children, even if they were lovers, all wore gold and silver and enjoyed the life of a superior. If I can marry this military governor, then I can. Thinking of this, Xiaoya's breathing gradually became heavier. Right now, no one knows the identity of the military governor, and no one knows the potential of the military governor. Right now, he only has one woman, my mother, and he's also a lolicon. If I take the initiative, he definitely won't reject a loli that comes to his door. As long as I can become his woman, his wife, then I, Xiaoya, can live the life of a superior for the rest of my life. I won't have to bear the contempt of those vulgar women in class anymore. Xiaoya began to fantasize about the beautiful life after hooking up with Gohan. That's right, I definitely can't reveal the true identity of the military governor. Otherwise, those vulgar women will pounce on him like bitches. I have to protect this secret, and only I know it. Thinking of this, Xiaoya quickly restored the computer to its original state and returned to the living room, pretending to be an obedient child watching TV. Xiaoya, after thinking about it, it's still not very suitable for you to live here. After all, this is the master's house. As a maid, I can't do this. The dishes that Maiden made were very simple. It was just some rice and a few vegetables, she said with a frown as she scratched her face. She had already promised to let Xiaoya stay here for a few nights, but now she wanted her daughter to go back. Her daughter would definitely be angry and sad. You don't have to worry, Mom. Xiaoya will go back to Auntie Guogua's place later. Xiaoya quickly ate a few mouthfuls of rice and agreed readily. Huh? Maiden was stunned for a moment. Why did her daughter suddenly change into another person? It was as if she had changed back to the obedient Xiaoya from before. Chapter 254. On a sunny morning, as the person in charge of the Yuzhang sword sect in Miling Mountain, Wang Yao was living a good life. As an ordinary person who was not a swordsman, Wang Yao felt that he was very lucky to be able to get to this position. Fortunately, his sister was beautiful and married to a senior member of the Yuzhang sword sect. Otherwise, he would not be in this position. In fact, all the major sword sects were the same. There were not only swordsmen, but also ordinary people. After all, the number of swordsmen was limited. Their main task was to go outside the city to clean up Yuankou, not to waste their time fighting for the interests of the Yuzhang sword sect. Those who really took care of the business of the Yuzhang sword sect in Miling Mountain were ordinary people like Wang Yao. A small number of swordsmen were arranged to maintain the safety of the mine. Of course, even the lowest-level swordsman received a salary from the Yuzhang sword sect far higher than that of Wang Yao, who was in charge of the affairs of the entire Miling Mountain. On this day, Wang Yao, who finally had some free time, was looking at the Fusang educational film that he had excavated from the ruins. He could not help but feel a little excited. The ancients really knew how to play. We modern people can't even compare with a hair of the ancients. How did they come up with these games? Looking at this action-packed educational film, Wang Yao's heart was itching. He quietly walked to the door and opened it. After seeing that there was no one around, he slammed the door of his office and quickly locked it. Then, he took out a roll of toilet paper from the cupboard and sat in his seat. Just as he untied his belt and was about to push it down with a loud bang, the door of Wang Yao's office was forcibly kicked open. "Who is it?" Wang Yao was so scared that his pants fell down. He looked up in panic, thinking that it was Yuan Ko who had rushed into the office. However, when Wang Yao took a closer look, he found that the person was wearing a Fusang samurai suit, with 4 long swords on his back and an empty scabbard hanging at his waist. Oh my God! Wang Yao slumped into his seat when he saw the person's appearance. Why does this person look exactly like the terrifying 10 Directions Sword Immortal? He can't really be the 10 Directions Sword Immortal, can he? I'm just going to masturbate when I'm bored. There's no need for a sword immortal to come and deal with me, right? Wuzhang Shifang walked into Wang Yao's office and looked around the office. Then, he saw the Fusang educational film on Wang Yao's desk. His face warmed up. You like to watch these action educational films left behind by the Fusang Empire? I like it, I simply like it. Wang Yao rolled his eyes and immediately flattered him. Sir, you don't know this, but I grew up watching the action educational films passed down from the Fusang Empire. All my skills are learned from these educational films. Every Japanese action educational film that has been passed down is a true classic, the most precious treasure of mankind. They are the unity of rich artistic aesthetics and rich spiritual connotations, the microphone of mankind's self-will, and the forever bright guiding light of life. As the saying goes, the great voyage depends on the helmsman, and the long journey of life depends on Fusang. The classic literary works of the Fusang Empire are such classics that guide our path. In these works there are nostalgia for the vast Fusang era, the direct confrontation of love, the yearning for ideals, the desire of the flesh, the pursuit of the spirit, the flow of poetry, the escape of the anxious soul, and so on. In order to educate us, the teachers endured all kinds of terrible environments, ugly male characters, the process of long-term relationships, and all kinds of torture props. These sufferings were sublimated by the diligent teachers into the yearning for life, and seamlessly blended together. This is a height that has never been reached in human thought and art. Good. Very good. Very good. Wuzhang Shifang was very touched by Wang Yao's words and nodded. Just based on what you said, it shows that you are a moral, cultured, and educated person. I have high hopes for you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm just speaking from the bottom of my heart, and it's all from the bottom of my heart. Wang Yao was so moved that he shed a few tears. Well, let me ask you, are you Wang Yao? Yes, I'm Wang Yao. I'm Wang Yao. Wang Yao pulled up his trousers and hurriedly fastened his belt. May I ask if you are Sword Immortal Shifang? Wuzhang Shifang nodded, and his expression changed from encouragement to indifference. You are the person in charge of the Yuzhang Sword Sect in Plum Forest, aren't you? Yes, yes, yes. I'm the person in charge of the Yuzhang Sword Sect here. I don't know what you need me to do here, Master Shifang. As long as you say the word, I will immediately mobilize the ordinary people of the Yuzhang Sword Sect to work for you. Wang Yao wanted to say all the ordinary people and sword bearers, but if any sword bearer disobeyed and angered Sword Immortal Shifang, wouldn't he be the unlucky one? For some arrogant sword bearers, even Sword Immortal sword bearers couldn't command them. Then, let me ask you, has there been anything unusual in the Meiling mountain range recently? Wuzhang Shifang calmly stated the purpose of his trip. After he arrived at the Meiling mountain range, he went straight to the biggest local bully, the Yuzhang Sword Sect. Every move in the Meiling mountain range could not be hidden from the eyes of these local bullies. Unusual situation? Wang Yao lowered his head and began to think hard. Every day, although all kinds of reports were sent to him in the Meiling mountain range, he had never seriously read these reports. At most, he only skimmed through the brief report on the mine occupied by the Yuzhang Sword Sect, the report on the income of the stone-crushing machine, or the report on the damage caused by Yuan Ko's attack. In fact, he did not care about any of them, but those reports were the same as usual, and there was nothing special about them. Although Wang Yao really did not know what was unusual, he did not dare to answer Wuzhang Shifang like this. It was obvious that Wuzhang Shifang had come because of the unusual situation. If he did not serve him well, even if the Sword Immortal Shifang generously let him off, the Yuzhang Sword Sect would punish him for dereliction of duty. Lord Shifang, please wait a moment. I need to confirm something. Wang Yao nodded and bowed to Wuzhang Shifang, then dialed the number of one of his subordinates. Wang Yao did not like this subordinate very much, because he was well-informed, nosy, inquisitive, and had a big mouth. After drinking a little wine, he would say anything that should not be said. Wang Yao did not know how he learned about Wang Yao's sister, and then he spread the news that Wang Yao had nepotism everywhere. Wang Yao was so angry that he planned to transfer him back to Yuzhang City in a few days to clean the toilet. Wang Yao communicated with the big mouth on the communicator for a long time before he turned off the communicator and reported to Wuzhang Shifang, Lord Shifang, there really isn't anything unusual. It's just that something interesting happened 2 days ago. 2 days ago? Something interesting? Wuzhang Shifang's eyes lit up. He had received the order from Hautian Jiendi in the early morning yesterday. Then the unusual situation must have happened before that. The time of 2 days ago was just right. Yes, I heard that 2 days ago in the Heng Mountain Sword Sect's gravel field, many people saw with their own eyes that a group of sword-bearers broke several marquises, a dozen earls, and hundreds of viscounts and barons. With so many rare crystals, it was as much as the rare crystals produced by Plum Ridge in 10 days, especially the marquises. They can't produce so many in a month. Wang Yao quickly told Wuzhang Shifang what he had found out. Be more specific. Wuzhang Shifang was keenly aware that this might be related to his goal. My lord, it's not that I'm not doing my best. It's just that it happened in the territory of the Heng Mountain Sword Sect. Our Yuzhang Sword Sect doesn't have enough information. Do you want me to bring you to the Heng Mountain Sword Sect? No, I will go myself. As soon as Wuzhang Shifang's voice fell, he disappeared from the office. Then, Wang Yao collapsed on the chair as if he had collapsed. Scared me to death. Fairy sword bearers are too scary, and this killing god Wuzhang Shifang is even scarier. I feel like he will stab me at any time. It is so scary. Luckily, I managed to get him to leave. Otherwise, I would have died from fear. Wang Yao patted his chest and said with a trembling voice. But soon, he felt a little smug. Be *stards of the Heng Mountain Sword Sect, it is your turn next. If I don't let you experience such a scary thing, how can I, Wang Yao, take off my pants? Wang Yao laughed sinisterly, but his face quickly became serious. No, I have to report this to the higher-ups. A person like Wuzhang Shifang suddenly appeared in Plum Ridge without a sound. Something big must have happened here. Damn, even I, a local tyrant, do not know what happened. How does Wuzhang Shifang know? An hour later, Wuzhang Shifang walked out of the office building of the Heng Mountain Sword Sect. Like Wang Yao, the person in charge of the Heng Mountain Sword Sect immediately began to lick Wuzhang Shifang's boots without any shame. After learning of Wuzhang Shifang's request, he immediately played the real-time video of what happened in the gravel field 2 days ago for Wuzhang Shifang to see. Therefore, the entire process of Gohan and his classmates breaking the gravel field was shown to Wuzhang Shifang. At first, it was Rina Takasaka's group of 4 who broke the gravel field. When he saw that Rina Takasaka had gotten so many Earl and Marquis Takasaka, Wuzhang Shifang immediately raised his suspicion level to the highest. Then, it was Gohan's group of 4 who started breaking the gravel field. When Gohan got 200 empty stones in a row, Wuzhang Shifang almost left out of boredom. However, when he saw Gohan get more than 20-dimensional crystals in a row, he was also shocked. Even with Wuzhang Shifang's experience, he had never seen such a scene of extreme luck. It seems that the appearance of the princes must have something to do with these 2 people. The 2 people Wuzhang Shifang was referring to were Rina Takasaka and Gohan. Where is this boy now? Find him for me immediately. After listening to Wuzhang Shifang's order, the Heng Mountain Sword Sect immediately mobilized all their surveillance and found Gohan's location very smoothly. Master Shifang, he is here. Chapter 255. As mentioned before, Gohan had accepted 5 other missions from the Sword-Bearers Mission Center in addition to the collection mission. One of them was called Luoting Mine Guard Mission, Ancient Sword Level. The mission required Gohan to guard the Luoting mine for a whole day. As a reward, Gohan would receive 5 hero coins. This was a relatively simple mission. He only needed to stay in the Luoting mine for a day. It was simple and safe. It would be great if the reward for this mission was better. Unfortunately, the officials of Yuzhang were no fools. They would not set such a high reward for such a mission. Otherwise, the sword-bearers would have accepted this mission instead of fighting with Yuan Ko. Originally, when Gohan accepted this quest, he did not intend to complete it. He could earn dozens of hero coins in a day, so who would care about 5 hero coins? But now, Gu Han had to complete this quest because the location of this quest was the Luoting mineral vein, one of the 3 most abundant crimson mineral veins in the Meiling mountain range. It was also the origin of the name Luoting encampment. The Luoting mine was directly controlled by the officials of Yuzhong. It was a super-rich mine that was not open to the public. At the same time, there were 5,000 ordinary people mining in the mine. To make it easier to manage, these ordinary people simply lived in the mine. With so many ordinary people, they would inevitably become the targets of Yuan Ko. Therefore, a considerable number of sword-bearers were needed to protect the entire mine. Although there were many sword-bearers directly under the officials of Yuzhong City, they were needed for many things. Therefore, the sword-bearers who were assigned to protect the mine were mostly recruited through the mission center. For example, Gohan, or the person in front of Gohan. Student Gohan, what a coincidence. Isn't Ao Lin with you? Rina Takasaka and Gohan chatted casually as they walked between the mines of the Luoting mine. That's right. The person who had accepted the same mission as Gohan was Gohan's classmate, Rina Takasaka. Ao Lin has her own things to do. Gohan gave a very simple answer. As for how sincere his answer was, one could tell just by looking at Reina Takasaka's awkward expression. Gohan-san, may I ask if you and Ao Rin-san are? Reina Takasaka stuttered, suddenly at a loss for words. Are you going to ask me if Ao Lin and I are a couple? Gohan took the initiative to ask before Reina Takasaka could ask. Yes. Hearing Gohan's words, Reina Kosaka shyly lowered her head, obviously agreeing to this point. Yes, we are indeed in a relationship, Gohan answered straightforwardly. Hearing Gohan's answer, Reina Takasaka's face instantly turned pale, as if someone in her family had died. Do you have any other questions? Gohan did not even look at Reina Takasaka. His rejection was quite obvious. No more. What else could Reina Takasaka do? She could only reply softly like a little bird that was hurt. In that case, let's go our separate ways. Gohan pointed at the 2 forks in front of him. Here, the mine was divided into 2 paths. According to the requirements of the mission, the 2 of them had to patrol separately and could no longer walk the same path together. Yes, I got it. Reina Takasaka nodded and then madly ran towards one of the tunnels. Gohan shook his head and walked towards the other tunnel. The feelings of first love were always bitter, and a certain author had never had the chance to experience the taste of first love. Gohan did not mean to hurt this innocent, cute, and lucky classmate of his when he sent Reina Takasaka away. He knew that Wuzhang Shifang could find him at any time. There was no way he could hide his miraculous feat of breaking stones more than 20 times in a row at the Heng Mountain Sword Sect. As long as Wuzhang Shifang asked around, he would be able to find out. Moreover, Gohan did not think that Wuzhang Shifang would not borrow the power of the local tyrant. Gohan might have to face Wuzhang Shifang at any time, and he did not want Reina Takasaka to get involved. This was not something a small ancient sword-wielder like Reina Takasaka could participate in. But when Gohan thought that way, he seemed to have forgotten the fact that he was also just an ancient sword-wielder. Porcine, do you feel that there are any good-looking ores in this mine? Gohan patted Chingpin's little head in the infant pouch. This was another reason why he separated from Reina Takasaka. With Reina Takasaka around, how could Gohan go around randomly mining? 50 kilograms of frog meat. Over the past few days, poor Han had become addicted to eating frog meat. He had continuously eaten more than 2 million RMB worth of frog meat. If an ordinary sword-bearer were to face such a foodie supreme sword lady, they would have vomited blood and died long ago. Even for a sword-bearer, 2 million RMB was a considerable amount of wealth. In less than 3 days, all of it had been fed into poor Han's mouth. Only Gu Han could be considered wealthy at the moment. Otherwise, who would be able to endure it? Tonight, I will treat you to 50 kilograms of frog meat. Then, I will buy another 50 kilograms so you can eat frog meat at home. How about that? Gu-han said lovingly. In the face of such a considerate master, what else could he say? He immediately poked his head out of the nursery bag, and then his eyes were like a radar, scanning the surrounding mine. There's a pretty one over there, and there's a pretty one over here. This piece of ore is ugly, and it's still ugly here. Qinpin commented as he walked. Qinpin said the good-looking ones were the marquises, and the ugly ones were the dukes. Even the day before, Gu-han would have swept away all the marquises and dukes. But today was different. Gu-han was not going to touch the crystals of these levels. The mines controlled by the government were not like the mines controlled by the Yuzhang sword sect. The government's rules were stricter than the Yuzhang sword sects. The sword-bearers could only patrol the mine and could not touch any of the dimensional crystals. This was to prevent the sword-bearers from stealing the ore in the mine. Every part of the mine was equipped with video surveillance equipment. Gu-han might be able to disguise himself once or twice, but if he did it too many times, it would be easy for him to give himself away. It would not be good if he attracted attention. So, Gu-han could only pick the more valuable and precious dimensional ores. For example, right now, Qinpin had secretly told Gu-han about a very good-looking dimensional ore. It was a dimensional ore that Gu-han thought was most likely a king grade. At that moment, this ore was in the mining basket of a miner next to Gu-han. It was an ore that had already been mined. In the monitoring room of the mine's management center, a staff member in charge of monitoring suddenly saw a miner slip while he was mining. The miner fell backward and hit his mining basket. The ore in the basket was scattered all over the ground. The miner frantically started to pick up the ore on the ground. Suddenly, the back of the miner's head blocked the surveillance camera. But quickly, the back of the head moved away from the camera. The staff member adjusted the camera's angle and found that a sword-bearer was passing by. He was kind enough to help the unlucky miner pick up all the ore on the ground and put it back into his mining basket. Oh, this sword-bearer is a good person who likes to help people. The staff member was an ordinary person. He was used to seeing swordsmen bullying ordinary people. Occasionally, he would see a helpful swordsman helping ordinary people, so he sincerely praised him. He completely forgot about the rule that forbade swordsmen from touching ores. Gu-han, who had used a small trick, easily got the target. He only secretly used a sword aura to cut off a rock under the miner's feet. Then, just like what the surveillance camera saw, Gu-han used the back of his head to block the surveillance camera to directly put the good-looking ore into his dimensional pocket. However, what Gu-han did not know was that he did not have to go through so much trouble to cover it up. At that moment, the monitoring center was in a mess. No one cared if Gu-han had stolen an ore or not. Just as the staff member was lamenting that Gu-han was a good sword-bearer, he suddenly saw a white figure flash across the screen of another surveillance camera. What's going on? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The responsible staff member immediately pulled up the surveillance video and played it 10 times slower. Sure enough, there was a white figure flashing by. The staff member was shocked. Could it be that Yuan Ko had barged in? He immediately slowed down the video by 20 times, wanting to see what the white figure was. However, something terrible happened. Even though the video was slowed down by 20 times, the white figure still flashed by. It did not seem to have slowed down much. The frightened staff member slowed down the video by 100 times, 500 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 100,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Even when the video was slowed down to 5,000,000 times, the white figure in the video still flashed by. He could not see its shape and appearance clearly. The staff member began to feel a suffocating fear. However, the reason for his fear was not because the white figure was moving too fast, but because the white figure's speed did not change. Regardless of whether it was played at normal speed or 5,000,000 times slower, the white figure always flashed across the screen at the same speed and time. This could not be explained by physics at all. However, one thing was certain. The mine had been invaded, and the intruder was most likely a very powerful Yuan Ko. The staff member left and reported the news to the leader. After watching the video, the leader made a decision on the spot and contacted all the sword bearers who were patrolling the mine. All sword bearers, please take note. It is suspected that an extremely fast white humanoid Yuan Ko has barged into the mine. All sword bearers, please search the mine immediately. Report immediately if you find any clues. Report immediately. Chapter 256. A white silhouette? Gohan could hear the panicked voice coming from the control room. His sharp senses told him that a powerful Yuan Ko had infiltrated the mine. That was because when Gohan received the call, all the ordinary miners had begun to evacuate the mine. They had left in such a hurry that they did not even bring the ores they had mined back with them. It was clear that the authorities had issued the strictest order to retreat. However, the authorities did not order the sword-bearers to retreat. Instead, they ordered the sword-bearers in the mine to search the entire mine to find out who had infiltrated the mine. Gohan was a smart person. A Yuan Ko that could cause the authorities to turn pale with fright was definitely not a simple character. He was not the saber-tier sword-bearer in the game who had 3 sword maidens. He was not a powerful player who could go head-to-head with another Yuan Ko. In reality, he was only an ancient sword-tier sword-bearer. Perhaps he could easily kill a rat-tier or tiger-tier Yuan Ko, and he could also deal with a ghost-tier or soul-tier Yuan Ko. However, if the soul-tier Yuan Ko surpassed soul-tier, Gohan's life would be in danger. As the saying went, a gentleman wouldn't stand in front of a collapsing wall. It would be best to leave such a powerful Gen Ho to the high-level sword-bearers stationed in the mines to deal with. It would be best for him to leave this dangerous place first. Right, I should also give Reina Takasaka a reminder. With her shy personality, she would probably carry out the orders given by the government without any hesitation. There's a strange smell on you. Just as Gohan was about to contact Reina Takasaka and ask her to retreat, a voice suddenly rang in Gohan's ears. Danger! Extreme danger! The moment he heard the voice, Gohan felt goosebumps all over his body. All his blood rushed to his head. All his senses were sending Gohan a signal of danger. Before this voice, Gohan didn't notice any movement around him. This meant that the owner of this voice had completely deceived his spirit sense. If she didn't take the initiative to speak, then he wouldn't have noticed that someone had come to his side. If the owner of this voice wanted to kill him, she only needed to lightly stab him in the back. Then Gohan, a young man with lofty ideals and a desire for revenge, would have to say goodbye to this world, and the book would come to an end. I mean no harm. I just want to look around. Hearing this, Gohan slightly lowered his guard. Then, he took a good look at the appearance of the person who spoke. She was dressed in white and had a slender figure. Her appearance was only average, but she had a murderous aura. She was a dangerous woman, Gohan judged immediately. I've seen this woman before, that was Gohan's second thought. As a matter of fact, when Gohan saw the woman's face clearly, he immediately recognized her origin. This woman would appear on the news from time to time and become the focus of the world's attention every few months. It was hard for Gohan not to be familiar with her. This woman was not Yuan Ko, but a sword mistress, an immortal sword mistress, the Kusanagi sword mistress. The Kusanagi sword mistress was Wuzhang Shifang's sword mistress. Every action of someone like Wuzhang Shifang would attract a lot of attention from society. Every time he achieved something, the media would flock to him. As a result, Wuzhang Shifang's sword mistress had a high degree of exposure. High-definition close-ups of the Kusanagi sword mistress often appeared on various headlines. There were very few humans who did not know this sword mistress. However, since the Kusanagi sword mistress had appeared here, didn't that mean that Wuzhang Shifang was also nearby? Thinking of this, Gohan's heart tightened. What was to come would eventually come. I am Gohan. Greetings, Kusanagi Sword Mistress. Gohan bowed respectfully to the Kusanagi Sword Mistress. Sword mistresses did not need to be so courteous, but the wielder had to maintain a certain amount of respect for the sword mistress. This was a rule that had been passed down for more than 1,000 years. The sword mistress risked her life for the survival of mankind. Humans had to maintain the proper respect for the sword mistress. The Kusanagi sword mistress was the Kusanagi sword mistress. Although the government had decided on her name, she preferred to be called the Kusanagi sword mistress on more than one TV show. She said that the name Kusanagi sword mistress was too lofty. It was a name that only gods deserve. She did not deserve this name, so she preferred to be called the Kusanagi sword mistress. Oh, by the way, the pinyin for Kusanagi was Tsaudi, not Tsauji. This was what a guy realized after typing Tsauji for a long time but could not type the word Kusanagi. No need for formalities. Tell the humans here that I am here. Tell them not to panic and to carry on with their work. The Kusanagi sword mistress said calmly after receiving Gohan's bow. Yes, Kusanagi sword mistress. Gohan immediately reported the fact that Baiin was not Yuan Ko, but an immortal grade sword mistress, the Kusanagi sword mistress, the Kusanagi sword mistress. The government was dumbfounded when they heard the news. Why would the Kusanagi sword mistress suddenly appear here? This did not make sense. If they had not pulled up the video of Gohan's location to confirm that Baiin was indeed Kusanagi sword mistress, the government would have thought that Gohan was just teasing them. What should we do? This was the question that hung over the minds of the government officials. According to the rules, even if she was an immortal grade sword mistress, she was not allowed to suddenly barge into the Yuzhong government's mine. This was equivalent to an American plane circling the skies of London. Although the two sides were so-called staunch allies, this was still a huge violation of international law. The most normal way to deal with this was for the Yuzhong government to chase Kusanagi sword mistress out of the mine and lodge a stern protest to Yanjing City. However, this was based on the fact that Yuzhong City had Jiendi. But everyone knew that the Kusanagi sword mistress was Wu Zhangshi's sword mistress, and Wu Zhangshi was Haotian Jiandi's general azure dragon. Behind the Kusanagi sword mistress stood Jiendi. However, at this time, there were only 2 immortal-grade sword mistresses in Yuzhong City, and they did not have the qualifications to offend Jiendi. If they forcibly drove away the Kusanagi sword mistress and angered Jiendi, it would not be worth it. The government officials could only bide their time and immediately send a report to the Yuzhong Sword Committee to ask for a solution. While waiting for the Yuzhong Sword Committee's reply, they received an urgent message from the Yuzhong Sword Sect. The person in charge of the Miling Sword Sect reported that the immortal-grade sword mistress, Wu Zhangshi, had just left his place and was now heading to the Heng Mountain Sword Sect. When the government officials heard this news, they were even more certain of the identity of the Kusanagi sword mistress, but they did not dare to act rashly. Wu Zhangshi's sudden appearance in the Miling mountain range meant that something big was about to happen. Soon, the order from the Yuzhong Sword Committee came. The order was very simple, with only 2 words: do whatever you want. Then the question was, should they do whatever they wanted with the Kusanagi sword mistress, or should they do whatever they wanted with the Kusanagi sword mistress? The government officials of the Luoting mine decisively chose the second option. What on earth happened? Even people like Wu Zhangshi, who are in Yanjing City, know about it, but these local tyrants know nothing about it. The government officials could not help but have the same question as Wang Yao. In the mine, Tian Cumulus Cloud, who did not say a word, seemed to be strolling very casually in the mine, while Gohan followed closely behind her, keeping a certain distance. Why are you following me? Tian Cumulus Cloud, who had been followed by Gohan for more than 10 minutes, stopped, turned around, and stared at Gohan. Human, what are you trying to do? Goddess Kusanagi, you misunderstood me. How would I dare to do anything? I just volunteered to help you find something. Gohan was so scared by Tian Cumulus Cloud that he took a step back and hurriedly explained. You're lying. Tian Cumulus Cloud was expressionless. Your eyes were all focused on me just now. You clearly have an ulterior motive. Well, Gohan smiled awkwardly. Since Goddess Kusanagi already knows, then I won't hide it anymore. I have admired Master Wu Zhangshir's heroic deeds since I was a child. Master Wu Zhangshir is my idol since I was a child, and also the person I yearn to marry. As for Goddess Kusanagi, I yearn even more. I didn't expect to see Goddess Kusanagi with my own eyes today, so I couldn't help but follow her. If Goddess Kusanagi doesn't like it, I will leave. You're still lying. Tian Cumulus Cloud looked Gohan up and down again. I said before that there are some interesting things about you. Now it seems like you're even more interesting. Heh. What else could Gohan say after being exposed twice? He could only laugh foolishly. However, just as Gohan was laughing foolishly, Tian Cumulus Cloud in Gohan's eyes suddenly stopped, as if there was a frame missing. In the time it took for that frame to disappear, Gohan felt his chest empty, and Chinpin was caught in Tian Cumulus Cloud's hands. Goddess Kusanagi, I'll leave now, please let go of my sword lady. Seeing that Chinpin was gone, Gohan completely panicked, and immediately begged Tian Cumulus Cloud to return Chinpin to him. At the same time, Chinpin, who was sleeping in Gohan's nursery bag, realized that he was suddenly caught. His two little hands and feet were like a panda that had been caught by a nanny, and he began to struggle with all four limbs. Who are you? Why don't I know you? Tian Cumulus Cloud raised Chinpin in front of him, and asked very seriously, I know thousands of sword ladies, why have I never seen you before? Let go of me, you white-haired woman, let go of Chinpin. Chinpin ignored Tian Cumulus Cloud's question, and continued to struggle to leave. Gohan, hurry up and save me. Chase this white-haired woman away, stinky Gohan. Goddess Kusanagi, please return Chinpin to me immediately, or else I'll take Chinpin back even if I have to risk my life. Gohan's heart broke when he heard Chinpin's plea for help, and he seemed to have forgotten the difference in strength between him and Tian Cumulus Cloud's sword. Is that so? Aren't you afraid of death? Tian Cumulus Cloud slowly put down Chinpin, and his sharp eyes stared straight at Gohan. Instantly, a murderous aura filled the air. Chapter 257. Why would an immortal sword-rank sword maiden kill an ancient sword-wielder like me? Gohan glared at Tian Tsongyun. If possible, I, Gohan, would be honored to be the first sword-wielder to be killed by Lady Kusanagi. You're crazy, Tian Tsongyun muttered, completely ruining Gohan's heroic stance. However, she instantly withdrew her murderous intent. Clearly, she had given up on killing Gohan. You're called Chinpin Jian, right? Tian Tsongyun's attention returned to Chinpin. She carefully sized up Chinpin and asked solemnly, I'll bite you. I'll bite you to death, you white-haired woman. Qingjiu did not answer Tian Moyun's question. He opened his mouth, which had two small canine teeth, and tried to bite Tian Moyun's hand. Unfortunately, Qingjiu's neck was too short, so he could not do it. Doesn't look like it, Tian Tsongyun muttered to herself. Suddenly, she grabbed Chinpin's pants and pulled Chinpin's pants down. What are you doing? Gohan was really angry this time. This woman had dared to pull Chinpin's pants and expose Chinpin's little butt. Apart from Gohan, no one else had the right to see Chinpin's little butt, not even a woman, an immortal sword maiden. Gohan lost control of his emotions. He rushed forward to snatch Chinpin back, but Tian Tsongyun only waved her hand calmly. Gohan felt an irresistible force slam into him like a truck, and then he was slammed into the wall of the mine. Oh no, I don't have Chinpin with me. I'm afraid I'll be half dead from this. Gohan was shocked. Without Chinpin, he only had half the fitness of an ancient sword maiden. He might not die from being hit by a car, but he would definitely be seriously injured if he was hit by a truck. In particular, the wall behind him was extremely hard. There was no room for him to cushion. Guhan knew that he could no longer hide his true power. He immediately mobilized all the sword essences in his body and activated the sword formation curtain, forcibly twisting his body in this critical moment. He forcefully changed the direction of his body that was originally going to crash into the wall to the direction of the mine cave. He only stopped after flying for hundreds of meters. At this movement technique, seeing Gohan's movement technique, Tian Songyun, who had always been indifferent, showed an expression of surprise for the first time. She didn't really want to hurt Gohan. When Gohan crashed into the wall, she stopped him. She didn't expect that Gohan could use his own strength to resolve it. If it was resolved by brute force, it would be impossible for someone who wasn't a spirit sword wielder to do so. Tian Songyun only gave a slight sigh of admiration, and then refocused her attention on Qingpin's chubby little butt. She only took a glance, and her expression suddenly relaxed. It can't be her. I'll return it to you. At this time, Guhan, who was 100 meters away, ran back at a flying speed. Tian Songyun directly threw Qingpin, who was making threatening gestures, back to Gohan without any pity. Gohan was quick to react. He took Qingpin into his arms with 2 hands, and then quickly helped Qingpin put on his pants. There were cameras all around. God knew if the staff in front of the cameras had seen it. Then he had to find a way to destroy all the video data in the entire monitoring center. Gohan avenged Qingpin. Qingpin also wants to take off this woman's pants. Qingpin has no appetite for meat tonight. As soon as Qingpin touched Gohan, he burst into tears. The tears in his small eyes flowed down, just like when there was a hole in the sky and Nuwa needed to mend the sky. Good. Don't cry. Be good, Gohan will take you to eat meat. Just now when Tian Songyun pushed him, Gohan knew that he was no match for her even if there were 100 of him. Although he hated Tian Songyun to the core, Gohan, who was strong and rational, would not be stupid to provoke her again. Leaving here was the best way. Wait. At this time, Tian Songyun stopped Gohan again. What's that pocket in front of your chest for? This? Gohan touched his incubator bag, and then stuffed the crying Qingpin into it. It's used like this, understand? Country bumpkin. A little interesting. Seeing Qingpin in the incubator bag, Tian Songyun showed a mysterious smile on her face. This smile suddenly gave Gohan a very bad feeling. That bag, let me sit for a while. There was a hint of excitement in Tian Songyun's tone. What? For the first time, Gohan began to wonder if there was something wrong with his hearing. Had he heard wrongly? I said, I want to try sitting on that bag. Tian Cumulus Cloud repeated more clearly. Then, Guhan started to act like a Spartan. What kind of joke was this? A woman who was about 1.9 meters tall and had a model-like figure actually wanted to squeeze into Qingpin's incubator bag? Not to mention the size. Don't forget that you're an immortal sword maiden. You're an immortal sword maiden. Is it appropriate for you to stay in an incubator bag? What on earth is an immortal sword maiden thinking in that head of yours? What Gohan did not know was that in his life, even after becoming Jiandi, he had never understood Tian Songyun's thoughts. I'm coming. Before Gohan could react, Tian Songyun's body instantly disappeared from her original position. Then, Gohan found that there was another head in the bag in front of his chest. Tian Songyun, this immortal sword maiden, had actually really sat in the incubator bag in front of Gohan's chest, and even squeezed together with Qingpin. This small bag was forcibly pushed open. How did you get in? Gohan was dumbfounded. It was such a small bag that was not much bigger than a school bag. It was already amazing that a poor person could stay inside. How did a 1.9-meter sword maiden like her manage to squeeze in? Just a little spatial ability. For an immortal sword maiden, this is just a small thing, Tian Songyun replied to Gohan. Indeed, as immortal swords, they were much more powerful than ordinary sword maidens. Warping space was just one of their abilities. White-haired ghost, get out, this is Qingpin's territory. You've seen Qingpin's little butt, and you still want to steal Qingpin's territory? Gohan's chest is Qingpin's. Get out. Qingpin was starting to get scared. This white-haired woman was too much. Qingpin was really going to be angry. Be quiet. Tian Songyun smiled slightly. She tapped her finger on Qingpin's throat, and Qingpin's voice immediately went mute. Although his mouth opened and closed, he was like a fish out of water, unable to say a word. After Tian Songyun silenced Qingpin's voice, she ordered Gohan, "Take me around here." There was no other way. Qingpin's voice was in the hands of this sword maiden. Gohan did not dare to disobey. He could only take the two sword maidens in his arms and walk around the cave for dozens of minutes, going around the entire cave. Gohan did not know why Tian Songyun wanted him to take her around the cave, but along the way, Tian Songyun, who stayed in Gohan's infant pouch, seemed to be a different person. She did not have the coldness from before. She waved her hands excitedly, shouted, and swayed left and right. She looked like a real child. Seeing Tian Songyun like this, Gohan did not know which one was the real one. "What's your name?" Tian Songyun, who had been shouting for a whole round, suddenly asked Gohan. "My name is Gohan," Gohan answered honestly. "Gohan." Tian Songyun muttered this name. "Judging from your movements, are you a descendant of the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain?" "No." Gohan denied it subconsciously. However, he suddenly shivered. What did the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain mean? He had never heard of the Flower Fruit Mountain, let alone the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain. This was because Gohan had searched for information about the Gu clan on the internet. However, he could only find information about a few ordinary people. He could not find any clan that could be called an aristocratic family. But why? Why would Tian Songyun suddenly mention the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain? Right, Tian Cumulus Cloud was an immortal sword, the first immortal sword to appear after the Great Calamity. She was the oldest immortal sword amongst all the immortal sword grade sword maidens. She was also the sword maiden that had been possessed the most times. She had experienced several hundred years of history after the Great Calamity. Her sudden mention of the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain was definitely not made up. There must have been a Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain in history. And this Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain must have been related to him. Gohan did not dare to continue thinking about it. Gohan seemed to have found a clue that would unravel the mystery of his origins. This was also the only clue he had found so far. "Lady Kusanagi, are you very familiar with the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain?" Gohan tried his best to suppress the trembling in his voice. He hoped to get more clues about the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain from Tian Songyun. "Of course I'm familiar with them. I've stayed in the Gu clan for over 30 years. Every brick and tile there was built by me." Tian Songyun sighed. "It's a pity that they're all gone." "What a pity." "Did the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain do something bad?" Gohan continued to pretend to be calm. He had a feeling that he was about to open the most mysterious door. "I don't know." Tian Songyun shook his head in the incubator pouch. "When I woke up from my long slumber, the Gu family had already vanished into thin air. In fact, they seemed to have been erased from the annals of history by you humans." "Then who was the founder of the Gu clan of the Flower Fruit Mountain?" Before Gohan could finish his sentence, his communicator suddenly rang. "Gohan-san, run. Reina Takasaka's voice came through the communicator, but before she could finish her sentence, she heard a blood-curdling scream, followed by a shrill scream. "Not good. What a powerful Yuan Ko." Tian Songyun, who was staying in the solid cold infant nurturing bag, jumped out of the solid cold infant nurturing bag almost at the same time Gohan picked up the communication, then disappeared into the mine. "Wait. Lady Kusanagi. How could Gohan let go of the only chance to find out more about his origins? He immediately ran toward Rina Takasaka's location on his gadget. Chapter 258. When Gohan arrived at Takasaka Rina's location, the first thing he saw was Takasaka Rina lying on the ground. But the horrifying thing was that Takasaka Rina was no longer a living person. She had turned into a stone statue lying on the ground. An artificial kenjo with cracks all over its body lay on the ground with Takasaka Rina. Judging from the cracks, the kenjo had completely shattered. The kenjo that fought for Takasaka Rina to the end had died just like that. Gohan clenched his fists tightly when he saw Reina Takasaka's statue. The girl who had just confessed to him, his classmate, had turned into a cold stone, and there was no longer any sign of life in her. When Gohan recalled her shy smile with her head lowered, his heart ached. What a good girl, but she died just like that. Those damn Yuan-ko. What are you doing? Amumo, who had disappeared earlier, suddenly appeared behind Gohan and asked in confusion. I'm mourning my dead comrade and classmate. Gohan gently stroked Takasaka Rina's face that had turned into stone. She was a very good girl. Before she died, she still remembered to remind me to escape through the communicator. I can understand your mourning, but I still want to ask, she's not dead yet, so why are you in such a hurry to mourn her? Amumo's words exploded in Gohan's mind. What did Amumo mean? What did she mean by not dead yet? Look at her neck. As soon as Amumo said this, Gohan received a hint and immediately found a mark that looked like a snake's head on Takasaka Rina's neck. Gohan sucked in a breath of cold air. This is the mark of Medusa. She's actually still alive. The root cause of the formation of the Miling Mountain sinkhole, the culprit that almost destroyed most of the Miling Mountain range and turned the 7 powerful spirit sword bearers, the Miling 7 heroes, into stone statues, the most powerful Yuan-ko that ever appeared in the Miling Mountain range, the universe-level Medusa, actually appeared again. As everyone knew, Medusa had the ability to petrify others. Medusa's hair was like a poisonous snake. As long as one was bitten by a poisonous snake or looked directly at by Medusa, then one would be petrified into a stone statue. At the same time, a snake head mark would be left on one's neck. Not bad, you actually recognize the Medusa's mark. As soon as I arrived at the Apricot Ridge, I smelled her scent and chased her all the way here. Tian Songyun looked around and said in a nostalgic tone, I haven't seen this old rival for more than 700 years. I didn't expect to see her here today. I thought she was dead. I didn't expect to see her here again. It turned out that she had appeared here because she smelled the scent of Medusa. Gohan silently thought. He originally thought that Tian Songyun was ordered by Wuzhang Shifang to investigate him, but it turned out that this was the reason. All the humans also thought she was dead. 500 years ago, Medusa and the Miling 7 heroes had a great battle here and then disappeared without a trace. Since then, they haven't appeared again for 500 years. Who would have thought that she had been hiding in the Mei Ling mountain range all this time? So that's how it is. Tian Songyun nodded and then said to Gohan, I think she also smelled the scent of her old friend, so she hid somewhere and didn't dare to come out. You take your friend and quickly leave this place. Let all the people in the Miling Mountain hide as far away as possible. Yes, Master Kusanagi. Gohan nodded. Medusa was a universe-level Yuan-ko, which was equivalent to a sword maiden at the immortal sword tier. Tian Songyun's trick just now proved that he was as weak as a piece of paper in front of a sword maiden at the immortal sword tier and a universe-level Yuan-ko. Even though he was talented and had unparalleled swordsmanship, he wouldn't be able to withstand 1 second of a universe-level Yuan-ko's attack. He had to escape immediately. Once Tian Cumulus found Medusa, there would definitely be an earth-shattering battle. By then, the aftermath of the battle would form another Plum Ridge sinkhole. It was time for all the sword-bearers and humans to evacuate. Master Kusanagi, can I trouble you? Guhan picked up Reina Takasaka's statue and wanted to leave. However, he looked at Tian Songyun hesitantly. I know. I'll give you that guy's blood. Tian Songyun guessed what Guhan wanted to say. Medusa's petrification was not impossible. As long as he dripped her blood on Reina Takasaka's statue within 24 hours, Reina Takasaka would be able to turn back into a human and her life would be saved. Once the 24 hours were up, Reina Takasaka would be completely dead. Thank you, Master Kusanagi. Guhan nodded gratefully. He picked up Reina Takasaka's body and started running out of the mine. In the management office of the Luoting mine. Suddenly, 3 of the surveillance cameras turned into static and the signal was lost. This meant that the 3 surveillance cameras had been destroyed. However, the staff present did not notice this. All their attention was on Guhan and Tian Songyun. Tian Songyun played in Guhan's infant pouch for tens of minutes while they watched her foolishly. It was only when Tian Songyun suddenly disappeared into Guhan's infant pouch that they stopped watching and realized that 3 of the surveillance cameras were destroyed. Boss, why are there 3 cameras broken? One of the staff asked. That's strange. The cameras here have just been repaired. Why are they broken? Hey, there's no danger in there anyway. Bring the tools to repair them. The person in charge was serious and wanted to send someone to repair the cameras. At that moment, Guhan suddenly received a call. Retreat. Run. All of you, get out of here. Guhan's words made the staff who received the call very unhappy. He retorted, Who are you? Why are you retreating? Why are you running? That's Goddess Tian Songyun inside. She doesn't need to retreat. Look at how cowardly you are. The staff thought that the person on the phone was retreating because Bai Ying told them to. I'm the swordsman that you've been watching for tens of minutes. The swordsman that has Goddess Kusanagi in his pocket. Forget it, it's useless to talk to you. Get me the person in charge. Hurry up or we'll all die. The staff blushed. He did not expect the person on the other end of the phone to be his target. At that moment, the person in charge had also noticed the situation. The staff transferred the call to the person in charge. Hello, Mr. Guhan. Why are you looking for me? Why do you want us to retreat? The person in charge, said slowly. He had probably investigated the mission information, so he knew Guhan's name. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Medusa, she's here again, Guhan said quickly. What did you say? The person in charge thought he was hallucinating. What Medusa? Wasn't that the legendary Yuan Ko that had been killed by human sages a long time ago? Why did she show up again? Mr. Guhan, you're a new swordsman. You might not know this, but if you lie about the enemy, even if you're a swordsman, you'll be investigated by the discipline committee. The person in charge thought Guhan was young and ignorant, trying to stir up some big news. I didn't say that, Goddess Kusanagi said it. You'll know when you see the student in my hand. I've already told you. As for whether you want to live or die, I don't care. Guhan hung up after saying that. What the F***, CK? The person in charge muttered, but the staff still found the camera that was monitoring Guhan at this time, took a high-definition picture, and zoomed in on the person in Guhan's arms to the fullest. Boss, why is this Guhan holding a stone statue in his hands? The person in charge suddenly asked when he saw the zoomed-in picture. The person in charge's heart suddenly trembled. Let me ask you, do we have a stone statue in the mine? The person in charge asked with a trembling voice. I don't think so. Why would we put a stone statue in the mine? Hearing this answer, the person in charge's face turned even paler. He shouted for everyone to come over, so the staff in the monitoring room all gathered in front of the screenshot. Have any of you seen someone who looks like this stone statue? The person in charge asked in a panic. He hoped that no one would answer his question, but the next second, a staff member raised his hand and answered, This stone statue looks like the swordsman who entered the mine with Guhan at the beginning. Get the video. Quick, get me the video of Gohan entering the mine. Quick. As soon as the person in charge gave the order, everyone got busy. Soon, they got the video that the person in charge wanted. The person in charge only took a glance at it before he slumped to the ground, took a deep breath, and said, "Retreat, everyone retreat. Immediately inform all the people in the mine, whether they are sword-bearers or ordinary people, to retreat back to Luoting camp. Then tell the people of Yuzhang sword sect and Hung Mountain sword sect around. No, tell all the people of Miling Mountain to retreat back to Luoting camp." Hearing the person in charge's order, all the staff members were dumbfounded. They thought that their boss had gone crazy. "Why are you all looking at me? Hurry up and pass on the order. Tell them that Medusa is back again." After saying this, the person in charge was the first to escape from the monitoring room. Then, all the other staff members suddenly realized what was going on and followed him out. A few minutes later, as the news spread, the entire Miling Mountain was in chaos. Everyone began to flee frantically to the Luoting camp. The process of Gohan's escape was very smooth. It was not like in most novels where Medusa suddenly blocked Gohan's way and then started an earth-shattering battle with Gohan. Gohan smoothly escaped from the mine with Reina Takasaka in his arms and returned to the management building of the Luoting mine. At this moment, the entire building was already empty. Only a few scattered commoners were still running out of the mines. All the sword-bearers seemed to have left this place. Against a universe-level elemental puppet, a few lone sword-bearers were just sending themselves to their death. Anyway, the sword Maiden Tian Songyun was also in the mine. The aftermath of their battle could kill a large number of humans and swordsmen. It was better to escape back to the Luoting camp and gather everyone's strength. That was the right way to win. Chapter 259. In the tea room of Yuzhang City's Sword Committee, two people with half their bodies buried in the ground were sitting together drinking tea. Gohan recognized one of them. He was Yuzhang City's Sword Tower's Pavilion Master, Cloudy Sword Immortal Lu Lei. The other person was the chairman of Yuzhang City's Sword Committee. He was also an Immortal Sword Tier Sword Wielder, Sword Immortal Baiju Wudao. These two were the only two Immortal Sword Tier Sword Wielder left in Yuzhang City. They were also the most powerful people in Yuzhang City. "Old Man Lu, what do you think about this matter?" Sword Immortal Baiju Wudao took a sip of tea and spoke first. "Are you talking about the Royal Seed or the Wuzhang Shifang?" Lu Lei asked with a twitch of his mouth. "Isn't that the same thing?" Zhu Wudao smacked his lips. "Of course they're two different things. A prince's matter is a prince's matter, while Wu Zhangfang's matter is Wu Zhangfang's matter." Lu Lei was displeased. "We naturally have to treat Wu Zhangfang with the best tea and wine. But we can't just give up on the Royal Seed. It's a treasure unearthed from our Plum Ridge mine. Does Yanjing City want to send a Sword Immortal to take it away? That's too easy. All right then. You'll go and get the Royal Seed back. Also, send the Wuzhang Shifang out of the country. I'll leave everything to you. How about it?" "I'm not going." Lu Lei shrunk his neck. "If we're going, we'll go together. I can't beat him. I'm just an old bag of bones. I still want to live a few more years. Is it easy to live to my age?" "Haha, that's right. That Wuzhang Shifang is young and strong. The two of us old bones have to work together to deal with him. It's really shameful." When Zhu Wudao said this, his face looked very miserable. Zhu Wudao looked like an old man with a bitter life. Coupled with the bitter smile on his face, he looked even more miserable. It was almost like he was crying at a funeral. "You can't say that. We're all pillars of humanity. How can we really fight? We're just learning from each other. We won't hurt each other." Lu Lei tried to comfort himself. "Old Man Lu, I've already ordered the people in the Plum Ridge mine to give up on the Royal Seed. How Tianjiendi is also old. It's said that the sword essence in his body is constantly declining. I'm afraid he's only a few years away from ascending to immortality. With the royal seed, he might be able to hold on for a few more years. This is a good thing for humanity. That's right. That old man Hao Tian still needs to hold on for a few more years. Otherwise, when only Long Shi Jiandi is left, I'm afraid it'll be the most dangerous time for humanity in the last 600 years. The last time we had only one Jiandi was left was 600 years ago. I didn't expect that our generation would encounter such a f***ket-up era. Lu Lei spoke very lightly, but the expression on his face was very serious. Let's not talk about sword emperors. Just take sword immortals for example. Including us two old men, there are 18 of them. Although it doesn't look like the lowest number in history, in fact, 7 out of the 18 old men who are over 80 years old are old men. There are 12 who are above 70 years old, and there are only 6 sword immortals who can be used for more than 20 years. According to my calculation, if we don't count the newly ascended sword immortals, after 5 or 6 years at most, there will only be 14 of these 18 people left. And after another 10 years, I'm afraid there won't even be 10 sword immortals. At that time, not only will we have to experience the lowest number of Jiandi, we will also have to experience the lowest number of sword immortals. 10. Lu Lei's hand trembled as he poured the tea. Your joke is not funny at all. After 10 years, there will always be descendants who will become sword immortals. The old will replace the new, isn't that always the case? Among the current spirit sword level sword bearers, if 3 of them can be promoted in 10 years, I'll have to thank Lord Kanzu. Last year, I went to participate in the big gathering of spirit sword level. What kind of trash are they? For them to be able to be promoted to spirit sword level, they really have 8 lifetimes of good luck. What kind of things are they? Trash. 8 out of 10 are trash. At this point, Zhu Wudao's expression was not anger, but sorrow, deep sorrow. That won't happen, old bai. You're thinking too much. How can the future be seen clearly in a single gathering? You've only seen him once, and you're already making an arbitrary judgment that he won't be able to become an immortal sword wielder? Let me tell you, back then, Gujin Jiandi. No, at that time, he was still sword immortal Gujin, and I was just a small famous sword level sword bearer. That time, when I was fighting outside the city, I met another level Yuan Ko. Oh my god, I was so scared that I peed my pants. Fortunately, at that time, sword immortal Gujin happened to pass by and killed that Yuan Ko with one sword strike. Think about it, meeting a sword immortal is such a rare thing. So, I shamelessly went up to ask sword immortal Gujin if I had the qualifications to become a spirit sword level sword bearer. In the end, guess what he said? Sword immortal Gujin shook his head desperately and very disdainfully told me that it was impossible for me to become a spirit sword level sword bearer. In the end, I'm now an immortal sword level sword bearer. Even sword immortal Gujin has times when he makes a mistake. Is that so? How come I've never heard of this story from you? Zhu Wudao stared at a certain someone with a puzzled look. A certain someone waved his hand. How can I say such a shameful thing? What Zhu Wudao didn't know was that this was actually a modified version of another story that Lu Lei often told. In the other version, the first half of the story was the same as what Lu Lei said at this time. Only the last sentence was different. In the other version, Sword Immortal Gujin said, "It's impossible for you to become a spirit sword level sword bearer in this lifetime, but there's still hope for you to become an immortal sword level sword bearer. Forget it, I really don't know much about the spirit sword level sword bearers in other base cities, so I won't say anything. But for the few spirit sword level sword bearers in our Yuzhang city, the 2 of us know them very well. Tell me, who among them is likely to become an immortal sword level sword bearer and take over the position of us 2 old men?" Zhu Wudao asked. "There are many. There are 4 or 5 of them. Their sword elements have exceeded 1 million quarks. It's only a matter of time before they become immortal sword level." Lu Lei was halfway through his sentence when he was interrupted by Zhu Wudao. Old Man Lu, I'm discussing this topic with you very seriously now. This concerns the future of our Yuzhong city. In 10 years at most, us two old men will be done for. When that time comes, we'll have to rely on those little guys to support us. Please answer my questions seriously. Don't joke with me. Zhu Wudao slammed the table heavily. You know the answer to this question better than I do. Why are you still asking me? Lu Lei saw Zhu Wudao's serious look, and could only answer helplessly. I admit that if it weren't for some dumb luck, among those little guys, only Hu Shao could advance further. Unless a miracle happens, the others won't be able to become immortal sword level. Although he admitted this point, Lu Lei still added unwillingly, although the spirit sword level isn't very useful, there are 3 little guys at the famed sword level that I have high hopes for. I know 2 at the treasure sword level, and they're not bad either. Oh right, there's also an ancient sword level kid. TSK, with his muscles and willpower, I think it's possible for him to become an emperor sword level. Ancient sword level? There's still a chance for him to become an emperor sword level? Zhu Wudao sneered. You old man, since when did you care about the ancient sword level kid? You even said he could become an emperor sword level kid. Do you think you're Bai Shao Jiandi? Bai Shao Jiandi was a Jiandi who was famous for his judgment. It was said that one day, he came to an ancient sword level freshman class to inspect. After talking to 30 students one by one, he wrote a note for each of them. On the note, some wrote ancient swords, some wrote treasured swords, and some wrote famed swords and spiritual swords. There was even a student who wrote Emperor Sword on his note. The others did not understand, so they asked Bai Shao Jiandi what was written on the note. Bai Shao Jiandi smiled and said that they would understand after 40 years. Indeed, after 40 years, people finally confirmed the meaning of Bai Shao Jiandi's note. It turned out that what was written on the note was the sword wielder's level at the time of their deaths. There were 30 people, and there was not a single mistake. Bai Shao Jiandi had said all of them correctly, including the ancient sword-level sword wielder who had written Jiandi. He was the person who came later and Jiandi. From then on, people were completely convinced by Bai Shao Jiandi's judgment. Zhu Wudao used Bai Shao Jiandi to mock Lu Lei. I'm telling the truth. That little guy does give me a feeling similar to a bureaucrat. Lu Lei forced himself to be a bureaucrat. Even if what you said is true, and that kid can really become Jiandi, that will happen in 30 years at the earliest. When the 2 of us die, what will happen to Yuzhong City in the next 10 years? Will it be supported by Hu Shao alone? Old Bai, you've been beating around the bush with me for so long. What are you trying to say? Lu Lei felt that something was wrong. Zhu Wudao was not a person who liked to complain. On the contrary, he was a person who liked to keep his troubles to himself. He suddenly said so much about Yuzhong City having no successor. He must be hiding something from him. What was he trying to say? Did you just realize it? Old man Lu, you're really old. If it were 10 years ago, you would have noticed that something was wrong. Zhu Wudao smiled bitterly. He took out a letter from his dimensional pocket and handed it to Lu Lei. What I want to say is in the letter. Read it yourself. Letter? Old Bai, when did you become interested in this kind of antique? Lu Lei took the envelope jokingly. Since entering the electronic age, almost no one used paper letters to communicate. It was fine if they were in the same city, but where could they find a postman to deliver letters between Bay cities? However, Lu Lei's smile only lasted until he opened the envelope. It took him 10 minutes to read the entire letter, and then he sat back in his seat in a daze. No wonder he had to use this antique letter paper. If the contents of this letter were to be intercepted by someone with ulterior motives, then the letter writer would be done for. Isn't he a little too bold? Lu Lei muttered to himself. Old man Lu, you've read the letter. I think you've also guessed why I said that Yuzhong City has no successor. What do you think about what is written in the letter? Or rather, what do you think we should do? Lu Lei wanted to say something, but suddenly their personal terminals rang at the same time. What? Medusa appeared in the Plum Ridge mine and has already fought with the heaven-gathering cloud sword. The two of them looked at each other when they received this shocking news. Lu Lei took the lead and said, "We have to deal with this matter. It just so happens that I want to meet this 10 Directions sword immortal." "No, you're the sword pavilion master. This matter is of great importance. You can't go." Zhu Wudao waved his hand. "This time I'll do it myself." Chapter 260. Guhan and the petrified Rina Takasaka had been waiting in the monitoring room of the management building for more than 20 minutes. Guhan initially planned to observe the situation in the mine through the monitors, but when Guhan arrived at the monitoring room, more than half of the monitors in the monitoring room had turned black. And these black monitors were all monitoring devices that monitored the inside of the mine. However, the rest of the monitors were still functioning. Guhan was able to observe the changes in the mine from all angles. However, after 20 minutes had passed, there was still no movement in the mine. It was as if Tian Songyun and Medusa were not in the mine at all, and everything was just Guhan's illusion. Of course, that was impossible. The petrified Rina Takasaka was the most obvious proof. I wonder how Tian Songyun is doing. According to her past achievements, Medusa shouldn't be a match for Tian Songyun. Guhan thought silently. Although he was very dissatisfied with Tian Songyun's behavior of humiliating Qinpin, Guhan still hoped that Tian Songyun would be safe. Ha! Poor Penniless is suffocating. At this moment, poor Penniless, who hadn't said a word, finally regained his ability to speak. That white-haired girl actually dared to stop this poor baby from speaking. This baby will definitely take revenge. This poor was very indignant about being muted. This poor usually loved to sleep, but once he woke up, he would be all kinds of lively and adorable things. Suddenly, he was speechless. The revenge of killing his father was nothing more than this. Alright, there are so many humans in Miling Mountain. Whether they can survive or not depends on Tian Songyun, who asked you to shut up. Just let her go. Guhan knocked on Qingpin's head and began to control the various equipment in the monitoring room. Guhan clearly knew that all his actions in the mineral vein just now were probably recorded by the surveillance camera, especially when Tian Songyun stayed in his infant nurturing bag. Guhan himself didn't care, but Tian Songyun and Wuzhang Shifang's faces didn't look good. Originally, Guhan thought that this video was destined to be leaked, but he didn't expect Medusa to suddenly appear and empty the entire monitoring room. This gave Guhan a chance to tamper with it. Soon, Guhan found the folder where the video was stored, and then deleted everything in the folder. Probably because he felt uneasy, Guhan cut off the mainframe with his sword, then took out the hard disk and hid it in his dimensional pocket. "What are you doing here?" Guhan had just finished destroying the corpses when he heard a deep male voice behind him. Looking up, he saw Wuzhang Shifang standing in front of him. "I'm checking to see if there's anyone left here and monitoring Medusa's movements. She and Lady Kusanagi are still in the mine. I don't know how they're doing." Guhan casually made up a reason, and then emphasized the fact that Tian Songyun was still in the mineral vein, trying to make Wu Zhangshi focus his attention on his sword lady and give up on finding trouble with him. However, Wuzhang Shifang was very calm when he heard that Tian Songyun was still fighting. He smiled and said, "A mere Medusa is definitely no match for my Tian Songyun. As for you, little guy, give me the prince seed in your hands." "Prince seed? How could I possibly have that thing?" Guhan was taken aback. "Lord Shifang, look at my pale face. Do I look like someone with the quality of a prince? Don't say such useless words to me, little guy. You have to know that petty tricks are useless in front of me." Wuzhang Shifang looked at Guhan quietly. "A prince seed is useless to you. On the contrary, to Lord Hao Tian, it's a life-saving item. You're a smart person. If Lord Jendi is gone, You're just a puny ancient sword rank. What else do you have to survive? Wuzhang Shifang's words were very calm. He could even be said to be very kind. There was not a trace of threat in his words. However, his words were very thought-provoking, making it impossible for anyone to refuse him. Gu Han smiled bitterly and scratched his head, a look of hesitation on his face. Seeing Gu Han's expression, Wuzhang Shifang knew that the Prince Seed was definitely with Gu Han. In fact, Wuzhang Shifang was not very sure that the Prince Seed was with Gu Han. His words just now were just a test. However, the test was very clever and could not be rejected. If Wuzhang Shifang used some kind of threat, such as if he would go to the disciplinary committee if he did not say it, or he would send him to see the King of Hell, then it was very likely to backfire. After all, the blood of young people was like a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger. On the contrary, if he were to talk about the righteousness of the human race and the future of the human race, these little guys who still had some hot blood in their veins would feel ashamed from the bottom of their hearts, and a sense of heroic mission would make them take the initiative to admit it. If it was a spirit sword realm old fox instead, how could his face change so much just because of a few words from him? Little guy, this Prince Seed was dug out by you. It is indeed unfair for me to take it away. How about this? I will give you 500 million renminbi, and then let the Yanjing Sword Commission give you 1 million hero coins. I think this price is worthy of your Prince Seed. I hope that you will put the future of humanity first, and not just care about your own personal interests. Sacrificing yourself for the greater good is the fundamental reason why we humans can survive for 1,000 years. Wuzhang Shifang's words were both tempting and righteous. Most people would not be able to refuse after hearing this. However, the price that Wuzhang Shifang quoted was actually bullying Gu Han. If he really took the Prince Seed to the auction house, not to mention 500 million, even 5 billion would be considered a slightly lower price. Prince Seeds had always been a priceless treasure. Whether it was an immortal sword rank or an emperor sword rank, it was a treasure that could save one's life. On average, the mines of the 8 Bay cities would be very lucky to produce 1 Prince Seed every 10 years, but immortal sword rank sword holders were born at a rate of 1 every year. The gap between supply and demand could be imagined. However, from another perspective, the price of 500 million was very fair. Gu Han was only an ancient sword rank sword holder. The difference in strength was so huge that he was just an object for the big shots to mess with. If Gu Han was a spiritual sword rank, then Wuzhang Shifang would honestly offer 5 billion. However, if Gu Han was an ordinary person, Wuzhang Shifang would be generous enough to offer 10 million. Sigh, this might be the best outcome. Gu Han sighed silently. In fact, with Gu Han's brain, how could he be fooled by Wuzhang Shifang's tricks? Although he and Liu Yanling had discussed countless ways to hide the Prince Seed from him 2 days ago, after careful thought, there was no foolproof plan at all. After all, he had caused too much of a commotion when he first crushed the stones. 1 lie had to be covered up by 10 lies, and as long as one of these 10 lies was exposed, then even if he was reasonable, it would become unreasonable. Moreover, although Wuzhang Shifang's words were full of coercion and temptation, they were also the truth. When the nest was overturned, there would be no intact eggs. If humanity really lost a Jiendi because of the Prince Seed, then Gu Han would really be the sinner of humanity. To sum up, after thinking for a long time, Gu Han finally decided to hand over the Prince Seed to Wuzhang Shifang. However, he could not hand it over for free. He had to obtain the highest benefits. Therefore, in order to hide, Gu Han had sneaked into the Luoting mineral vein. In the entire Miling mountain range, only the Luoting mineral vein had surveillance cameras everywhere. At the same time, it was also directly connected to the Yuzhang city officials. According to Gu Han's original plan, he would discuss the deal with Wuzhang Shifang in the mine under the surveillance cameras. With the video as proof and the Yuzhang officials' direct attention, Wuzhang Shifang would not dare to force him. This way, he could discuss the benefits with Wuzhang Shifang. However, he never expected that Medusa would suddenly jump out and completely disrupt all of Gohan's plans. Right now, there was only him and Wuzhang Shifang in the surveillance room. Apart from him, there was no one else. If he kept calculating and haggling over the price with Wuzhang Shifang, it would anger Wuzhang Shifang. Even if he was killed, no one would know it was Wuzhang Shifang who did it. Therefore, Gohan pretended to be a naive, greedy, and hot-blooded young man. He used this appearance to face Wuzhang Shifang. With Wuzhang Shifang's arrogant character, he would not have the intention to kill such a young man. He would more or less promise him some benefits. Sure enough, Gohan's disguise was successful. Wuzhang Shifang took the initiative to offer a price of 500 million. This made Gohan secretly nod. This was already the best result. Wuzhang Shifang was more generous than he thought. Master Shifang, I'm ashamed of myself. This prince seed is indeed in my hands, but it's not with me now. It's with my friend. I'll take Master Shifang to get it, but don't mention 500 million renminbi. I don't dare to take a penny from Master Shifang. When Gohan said this, his face was full of shame. His acting skills were top-notch. I, Wuzhang Shifang, have no reason to take back what I've given out. Little guy, you better accept this 500 million renminbi. Otherwise, you'll be ruining my reputation. I'll do as you say. Just as the humble, good-for-everyone deal was about to end, suddenly, there was a loud bang, followed by a shock wave that was like the explosion of a small nuclear bomb. All the instruments and computer screens in the monitoring room exploded in an instant, and even the high-strength cement alloy building collapsed in an instant. If it weren't for Wuzhang Shifang's quick reflexes that allowed him to pull Gohan out of the monitoring room, Gohan would have been buried in the entire monitoring room. What a powerful force! This isn't the power that a universe-level Yuan Ko should have. Wuzhang Shifang, who had just rescued Gohan, had a drastic change in expression. He threw Gohan to a secluded place and rushed towards the direction of the mine. Chapter 261. When Gohan woke up from his dizziness and saw the collapsed administration building, he couldn't help but feel some lingering fear. The shockwave just now was too sudden and too fast. His reaction speed wasn't even a tenth of Wu Zhangshir's. If Wu Zhangshir wasn't there just now, he would have been crushed under the collapsed building. Although he wouldn't have died, he would have been heavily injured. I owe Wu Zhangshifang a favor this time. When I become an immortal sword saint in the future, I will definitely return this favor. Gohan muttered to himself. His life had indeed been saved by Wu Zhangshifang just now. This was a huge favor, a life-saving favor. However, Wu Zhangshifang did not know that he had earned a favor for nothing. Even if he knew, he would not have cared. What use was a favor from a mere ancient sword wielder? Of course, at some point in the future, Wu Zhangshifang would deeply feel how important this favor was. If he could, he would like to return to this time and owe a few more favors. This mountain range that was full of holes was indeed a mountain range formed by dimensional crystal mines. The shockwave was strong enough to destroy the administration building, but the entire mine had only slightly caved in. Wu Zhangshifang used the sword mark between him and the heavenly cumulus cloud sword to successfully find the heavenly cumulus cloud sword in the mine. At this time, the heavenly cumulus cloud sword's body was a little disheveled. Not only was his body covered in dirt, but his entire left arm had a strange color. It looked like stone. Wu Zhangshifang, why are you so late? Tian Cumulus Cloud directly called Wu Zhangshifang by his name. Although Qinpin also called Gohan, there was a hint of intimacy in it. It was cute and full of attachment and dependence. However, when Tian Cumulus Cloud called Wu Zhangshifang, it was cold, as if he was half a stranger. This was very rare between a sword wielder and a sword maiden. Even a sword wielder and a sword maiden, who had just completed their synchronization, would call each other by name with some emotion, unlike Tian Cumulus Cloud's coldness. Something happened on the way, but I've achieved my purpose of coming here. Wuzhang Shifang was already used to Kusunagi's attitude. He frowned as he looked at Kusunagi's petrified left arm. How did this happen? Did you just fight with Medusa? We fought. Even though she managed to bite my arm, I managed to chop off 3 of her heads, so it was a draw, Tian Songyun replied. She actually tied with you. Wuzhang Shifang's frown deepened. She's only a U-class Yuan Ko. How could she be on par with you? What if she's no longer a universe-level Yuan Ko? Tian Songyun looked around cautiously. Her strength, just now, has reached the standard of the universe-level Yuan Ko. She has advanced. Advanced. Wuzhang Shifang didn't say anything. When Yuan Dan increased their strength, it was called leveling up. This phenomenon was more common for low-level Yuan Dan, but leveling up was very rare for Universe Dan. It was even rarer than the appearance of a Grand Prince. I heard that Medusa disappeared here for 500 years. 500 years is enough for her to advance. She's the daughter of the primordial sea god, and she has the same foundation as that old pervert Poseidon. It's not strange for her to reach the universe level, Tian Songyun said. It was hard to tell that she knew so much about Medusa. Is she still in the mine? Wuzhang Shifang pulled out a sword from his back. This was his spirit sword level sword maiden body. Because Tian Cumulus Cloud had already materialized, Wuzhang Shifang could only use the spirit sword level sword maiden body as his weapon. She should still be there. Oh no, she's leaving the mine. Tian Songyun suddenly opened her eyes and began to chase in a direction. Wuzhang Shifang shook his head and followed closely behind Tian Songyun. I didn't expect Medusa's petrified statue to be so strong. After Wuzhang Shifang left, Gohan suddenly remembered that Rina Kosaka's petrified body was still buried under the ruins. Afraid that the stone statue would be crushed, Gohan hurriedly dug Reina Takasaka's statue out from the rubble. Amazingly, the statue that had been petrified by Medusa was not damaged at all. Even its hair was perfectly preserved. That was why Gohan was so surprised that he muttered to himself, "Of course, I'm the god of sirens. The power of a god isn't something a little human like you can understand." This was a somewhat shrill voice. It sounded like a lunatic. Gohan abruptly turned his head, only to discover that there was no one behind him. There were no people or Yuan Shen there. God of Sirens, isn't that Medusa's divine title? Gohan was suddenly reminded of this. A great fear surged in his heart. He almost dropped Rina Kosaka's statue and ran for his life. However, Gohan's rationality stopped him. If Medusa was really by his side, he wouldn't be able to escape from her even if he could fly into the sky. The only thing he could do now was to maintain his current state and think of a way to get out of this crisis. He was not in a game, but in reality where he could die at any time. There was no way he could revive, so he had to be careful with every step he took. Just as Gohan was thinking of a way to escape, Chinpin suddenly jumped out from the nursery pouch and said, "Gohan, why do I smell a foul stench nearby? It smells like a woman who hasn't taken a bath for hundreds of years. How dare you? What did you say?" A crazed and angry voice suddenly rang out, and a giant snake, as thick as a train, suddenly stretched out from the surrounding void, and with an incredible speed, it bit towards Super Solid Han's neck. When Gohan heard Chinpin's words, he knew that he was in trouble. He was about to die. Without a word, Gohan grabbed Chinpin's neck, where Chinpin's sword hilt was. Chinpin wanted to say something, but Gohan forced the sword back into his hand. In the nick of time, he stood in front of Lin Huang. Then, like an F1 car, he flew out at a speed of nearly 500 kilometers per hour and slammed into the stone wall of the mine. Even though the stone wall was made of extremely hard dimensional crystal ores, It was still left with a shallow mark by the solid cold. Then, like a broken sack, Gohan fell from the stone wall. The chinpin sword in his hand also fell to the ground. The brilliance on his body was gone, like a piece of scrap iron. This was a sign that the energy of the shield had been exhausted. If Gohan had not been wise enough to know how to make a choice and mobilize all his strength to protect his head in a tenth of a second before he was hit, Gohan's head would have burst open like a watermelon and he would have died on the spot. But at this time, although Gohan was still alive, he was less than a minute away from death. If someone had been next to Gohan when he hit, he would have heard a crackling sound. This sound was like the sound of someone who had bought a pack of Little Raccoon instant noodles for 50 cents and then crushed it into powder in his hand. However, this time it was not the crispy noodle snacks that turned into powder, but the bones all over Gohan's body. At this time, if one took an X-ray of Gohan, they would find that except for his skull, none of Gohan's bones were intact. Almost all of them had turned into glass-like fragments, and Gohan's body had become a flesh bag filled with glass fragments. What was more frightening was that these bone fragments had all pierced into Gohan's internal organs. His heart, liver, spleen, stomach, and kidneys were like cactus balls full of thorns. All the organs in Gohan's body were bleeding, and almost 80% of the main blood vessels were broken. In another 10 seconds or so, Gohan would die from excessive blood loss. This was a real death, a death that would bring the book directly to the end. At this critical moment, Tian Songyun and Wuzhang Shifang rushed out of the mine and saw Gohan's body at a glance. Save him! Tian Songyun saw Gohan's body that was like a broken sack that had been run over hundreds of times on the road, and his expression suddenly changed. He immediately asked Wuzhang Shifang for help. I can't do it. Wuzhang Shifang shook his head expressionlessly. His body has become a flesh bag filled with glass fragments. Unless he is immediately sent to the hospital for body replacement surgery, there is no other way to save him. Then use your medical pod to freeze his body. When the battle is over, send him to the hospital. Tian Songyun's face was full of anxiety, which made Wuzhang Shifang's heart ache. Wuzhang Shifang had been injured countless times, but he had never seen such an expression on Tian Songyun's face. Why did this ancient sword-wielder make Tian Songyun look like this? You know me. When have I ever stored medical pods in my dimensional bag? The samurai of Japan either win or die. There is no second choice, so I have never needed medical pods. Tian Songyun was speechless. It was true that Wu Zhangshi never carried a medical pod with him. Not only did Tian Songyun, who was Wu Zhangshi's sword mistress, know this, but everyone in the world knew this. Just as Wuzhang Shifang had said countless times on television, he never carried medical pods in his dimensional bag. It was used to cut off his retreat, and he would never allow himself to think of retreating or retreating. Just like Hao Xiang you had cut off all means of retreat, it was either victory or death. Damn it, are the descendants of the Gu family really going to die today? Tian Songyun closed his eyes in pain. Without the medical pod to freeze Gohan's body immediately and preserve Gohan's last trace of life, Gohan would really die, and the Gu family of Mount Huagua would really be extinct. Chapter 262. Medusa, why are you bullying a junior like this? You disrespectful old woman. Tian Songyun shouted angrily at the sky. Ha 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 ha, Tian Songyun, it's been more than 700 years since I've seen your angry expression. I didn't expect to see it again after 700 years. How nostalgic. Medusa's figure was hidden in the void, and only her voice could be heard. This was Medusa's innate ability. In addition to being able to petrify any opponent, she could also hide herself in the void. Only when she attacked would she reveal her true body. Then I'll make you even angrier. Medusa suddenly laughed maniacally. 5 giant snakes suddenly stretched out of the void and bit towards Tian Songyun's body. Tian Songyun snorted coldly. As if to counter the 5 giant snakes, Tian Songyun's body also flew out of her body. These sword rays were like high-speed darts that flew into the sky and met the 5 giant snake heads head-on. In ancient times, there was a legend about Tian Songyun. At that time, Tian Songyun's master, the crown prince of Fusang, was ordered by the emperor to enter the southern Sagami country to wipe out the god of violence. Some local tribal leaders told Tian Songyun that the god of violence lived in a large swamp filled with grass that was taller than a person. Wu Jianming believed the words of these tribal leaders and entered the grassy swamp. Then, the local leaders immediately ordered their subordinates to light fires in all directions of the swamp in an attempt to burn Wu Jianming to death in the swamp. In the end, at the critical moment, Tian Songyun flew out of Tian Songyun's scabbard. In the blink of an eye, she cut off all the grass in a radius of dozens of miles. The fire was extinguished by itself. Tian Songyun, who was lucky enough to escape, immediately killed all the local people in order to take revenge. Although this was only a legend, and Tian Songyun herself had never commented on this legend, her main ability was indeed related to the sword rays that could instantly reap a person's life. The 5 streaks of sword light collided with the 5 serpent heads in an instant, but the 5 ferocious serpents instantly dissipated like bubbles. "Oh no, this is an illusion, it's fake." Tian Songyun's expression changed, and he tried to summon the sword light back, but it was too late. Another giant snake appeared less than 20 meters away from Tian Songyun. "Dodge!" Wuzhang Shifang grabbed Tian Songyun's hand and instantly disappeared from his original position. A few tenths of a second later, he appeared in another place far away. "You are right, F***CK. She is no longer a universe-level Yuan Ko. No universe-level Yuan Ko can hide from my spirit sense and come within 100 meters of me." This was the first time Wu Zhang showed a serious expression towards Medusa. This meant that he already regarded Medusa as an evenly matched opponent. Fortunately, I reacted quickly. Otherwise, our shields would have lost at least 5% of their energy, Wuzhang Shifang added. "No, even if we don't hide, nothing will happen, because Medusa's target is not us." Tian Songyun's body emitted a strong murderous intent. This was the first time Wuzhang Shifang had seen such a strong murderous intent. He raised his head and looked at where he had just been. Just as Tian Songyun had said, Medusa's target was not him, but the corpse of the ancient sword wielder next to him. Oh, it was not a corpse yet. After all, there was still a wisp of life floating in Gohan's body. At this time, the ancient sword wielder's corpse was hanging in the giant snake's mouth. As long as the giant snake bit or swallowed, Gohan's last trace of life would be completely destroyed. "Medusa, what are you doing? He is already a corpse. Are you not going to let go of a corpse?" Tian Songyun's face was full of anger. She waved her hand, and another 5 sword rays flew out of her body. Together with the 5 sword rays that had flown away and returned, they surged around Tian Songyun according to some mysterious formation. "Medusa, don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you're hiding in the void. At most, I'll destroy the entire void." "Ohaha, Queen Tian Songyun, don't be so agitated. I don't intend to fight to the death with you." Next to the giant snake that held Gohan's corpse in its mouth, 8 more giant snakes crawled out one after another. Then, a gigantic face of unparalleled beauty appeared in the void. This face had 9 strands of black hair. These 9 strands of hair extended from the face's scalp to the 9 giant snakes' tails, or rather, the 9 giant snakes' tails grew from the head's scalp. There was nothing much to say. This head was the universe rank Yuan Ko Medusa that had killed 99% of Gohan in one blow. Oh no, it was now the universe rank Yuan Ko Medusa. "Ohaha, Tian Songyun, you seem to care about this person a lot." Medusa laughed wildly. "This guy's mouth is too stinky. If I, Medusa, don't destroy him, I won't be able to wash away the humiliation I've suffered. But for the sake of our old friendship, I'll leave his corpse intact. Tian Songyun didn't say anything. Well, it seemed that even Tian Songyun had tacitly agreed that Gohan had no chance of survival. She could only try her best to leave his corpse intact. Since ancient times, ordinary people who entered the Immortal's Sword and Immortal's battlefield did not have a good ending. Suddenly, the giant snake that had Gohan's body in its mouth began to twist and place Gohan's body in front of Medusa's giant face. It also turned Gohan's body so that Gohan's face was directly opposite. At the same time, Medusa's eyes began to emit purple light. Seeing this purple light, Tian Songyun's expression changed drastically. Medusa, didn't you say you wanted to leave his corpse intact? Why are you preparing the gaze of death? Hey, my dear Miss Tian Songyun, don't you know that my gaze of death can turn people into stone? I turned this sword wielder into stone, didn't I just leave his corpse intact? Medusa said with a smile. Medusa, do you really think that I, Tian Songyun, am an idiot? If your gaze of death missed his eyes, his body would instantly melt into a pool of blood. Tian Songyun said angrily. Medusa's gaze of death could indeed turn an opponent into stone, but the opponent had to look into Medusa's eyes. If the opponent did not see it or close their eyes, then the gaze of death would become a body-melting ray, turning all organic matter in front of it into a pool of blood. At this moment Gohan was almost a corpse. His eyes were tightly shut. There was no way he could look into Medusa's eyes. If he could not look into Medusa's eyes, then Gohan would not even be able to keep his corpse intact. He would only turn into a pool of blood. It was truly tragic. Ahaha, Lady Tian Songyun, don't you know that you've always been an idiot in my eyes? Medusa's words completely ignited Tian Songyun's anger. The 10 sword rays around Tian Songyun began to vibrate violently, ready to attack at any time. Ahaha, your Kusanagi sword rays are so scary. I, Medusa, am almost scared to death. Medusa's face twisted strangely. How about this? Let's use your Kusanagi sword aura to turn this human into a pile of minced meat. This way, I can save the energy of Doomgaze. That's great. Gohan's body stood in front of Medusa like a shield. If Tian Songyun's Kusanagi sword rays started to attack, Gohan's body would be cut into a pile of minced meat by Tian Songyun herself. Tian Songyun, it's been 700 years, but your personality still hasn't changed at all. If you're not an idiot, then who is? Medusa laughed maniacally, and a purple ray instantly shot out. The target was Gohan's head. At this moment, Tian Songyun closed her eyes in grief. I'm sorry, Goo Black Tortoise. I couldn't protect the last of your bloodline. I couldn't even keep his corpse intact. Tian Songyun's heart was filled with regret and sorrow. Huh! Wuzhang Shifeng, who had been watching everything calmly, exclaimed in surprise. Tian Songyun quickly opened her eyes and was shocked to find that Gohan's body was still in the snake's mouth, but it had turned into the color of stone. After Rina Takasaka, Gohan was also petrified. This human actually opened his eyes at the last moment. Medusa was also shocked. She had been staring at the human's eyes when she activated her skill. At the last moment when the gaze of death was about to hit, the human miraculously opened his eyes. His pitch-black pupils stared into her own. Naturally, the gaze of death did not melt Gohan's flesh. Instead, it turned him into a piece of stone. Was it a coincidence or was it intentional? Medusa debated in her heart. It's fine if he opened his eyes by chance, but if he deliberately opened his eyes at the last moment, then it's too scary. His body has completely collapsed, and his consciousness should be weaker than an ant. If he used his own will to open his eyes and keep his body intact, then it's too scary, too scary. Forget it, a human who turned himself into a stone is dead no matter what. No matter how scary his will is, as long as he's dead, that's enough. Medusa ended her thoughts. She grabbed Gohan's tongue and flung Gohan's petrified body to the ground. In fact, Medusa wanted to go one step further and crush Gohan's stone statue, but she did not have the time to do that. Tian Songyun, who was filled with anger, slashed the 9 Kusanagi swords around her at Medusa. Facing the 9 powerful Kusanagi swords, even Medusa did not dare to take them head-on. Her 9 snake heads shot out 9 gaze of death at the same time and collided with the Kusanagi swords. The Kusanagi swords slowed down for a moment, and Medusa's body disappeared from her original position. Oh haha, Tian Songyun, I don't have time to fight with you. I still have to deal with that B***starred Poseidon. I'm leaving. Medusa laughed mockingly and prepared to retreat. This was the base camp of Yuzhang City. Only a fool would fight with Tian Songyun here and wait for Yuzhang City's celestial sword tier sword bearers to come and help. Was this a game of landlord? Chapter 263. Medusa's body gradually disappeared into the void. This was Medusa. Her attack power might be the worst among the Yuan-ko, but when it came to escaping, Medusa was indeed very strong. As long as she retreated into the void, she was confident that she could escape from the battlefield even if she was surrounded by several sword maidens. Tian Cumulus Cloud gritted her teeth. Unless she sealed the void, there was no way to keep Medusa. However, once the void was sealed, the entire Mei Ling Mountain would suffer extremely serious consequences. Perhaps more than half of the humans in Mei Ling Mountain would die, so Tian Cumulus Cloud could not seal the void at all. Medusa was about to escape arrogantly after killing people, but unfortunately, a key figure rushed over. Medusa, since you're here, don't leave something behind. How can you face me? Suddenly, such a sentence exploded in the sky. Then, a series of explosions came, but the sound was very strange. It was like firecrackers exploding under a blanket. A dozen seconds later, a giant snake fell from the void and heavily fell to the ground. After that, the snake's head twisted in pain, and black smoke came out of its body, turning into black hair. The giant snake was originally an illusion of Medusa's hair, and after losing the support of Medusa's power, it naturally returned to its original appearance. Then, Medusa's mournful curses could be heard in the void. Xianming, I will break you in half one day. I hope you can keep your promise. Medusa, I will wait for you in Yuzhang City. In the sky, a woman with a pair of huge wings slowly descended. This woman's face was peaceful, looking like a gentle middle-aged woman. She gave people the feeling that she was a junior high school teacher. However, a pair of huge wings several times larger than her body stretched out from her back. There was also a small snake hanging from each of her earlobes. These were living snakes. When they saw Tian Cumulus Cloud, they raised their heads, opened their mouths, and hissed as they spat out their slender tongues. Taking a closer look at her hands and feet, they found that Xianming's hands were more like chicken claws. Her fingers were long and curved, and her nails were as sharp as blades. It seemed like they could pierce through anything easily. Her feet weren't wearing shoes. The soles of her feet were round with 4 toes spread wide, covered with black hair. Compared to her hands, Xianming's feet looked like claws. Generally speaking, most of this woman's physical characteristics were that of a human, but some parts of her resembled a bird. Wuzhang Shifang greets Lady Xianming. Seeing the half-human half-bird land beside him, Wuzhang Shifang bowed respectfully. He had said many times that this was the etiquette that humans had to do to the Sword Lady. It represented the humans' respect for the Sword Lady. You don't have to thank me. I didn't kill Medusa. I just took one of her heads. The wings on Xianming's back slowly folded, just like a bird's wings. She was also a sword lady, and she was also an immortal sword lady. Her name was Xianming, the legendary sword of one of the 12 Zhu Wus, Xianming. She had basically inherited the 12 Zhu Wus Xianming's human face and bird body. She had a green snake hanging from each of her ears and 2 green snakes under her feet. However, there were still some differences. The Zhu Wu Xianming's body was completely oval-shaped. It was a bird's body with no upper or lower body. As for the sword lady Xianming, her body was basically like a human's. She had breasts and buttocks. Well, that wasn't the main point. Medusa seems to have gotten a lot stronger. I fought with Medusa 600 years ago. Last time, I broke 3 of her snake heads with one grab. This time, I barely managed to take off one. Xianming's first reaction when she landed on the ground was that she felt that Medusa had gotten stronger. That's right. Tian Songyun and I feel the same way. It seems like Medusa has become a universe rank Yuan Ko, Wuzhang Shifang said. She actually leveled up. Cough cough. This is really bad news. Don't misunderstand. The one who said this was not Xianming, because Xianming did not know how to cough. The one who spoke was a white-haired old man. He was the other immortal sword-bearer at the tea party with Lu Lei. He was the chairman of Yuzhang City's sword committee, Baiju Sword Immortal Zhu Wudao. Xianming was Zhu Wudao's immortal sword lady. Senior Baiju, Junior Wuzhang Shifang greets you. Seeing Zhu Wudao, Wuzhang Shifang bowed again. This was the etiquette of a junior to an elder. It had nothing to do with strength. Sword Immortal Wudao, no need to be so polite. Everyone is fighting for humanity. There's no need for such formalities. Zhu Wudao laughed and helped Wuzhang Shifang up. How is it? How's the battle situation here? I had Xianming rush over first, but I was late. I only heard that Medusa had already leveled up to the universe rank. I wonder where that Medusa is now? Wuzhang Shifang shook his head and said, she should have already escaped. Rumor has it that Medusa is one of the few shrewd people in Yuan Ko. How could she have the guts to fight alone near the Bay City? I'm afraid she has already escaped hundreds of miles away. Forget it. If she escaped, then so be it. As long as no one died, it's a good thing. I see that sword Immortal Omnidirectional has already evacuated the crowd ahead of time. This is truly a blessing amidst misfortune. It was a huge battle, but there were no casualties. This is a great merit. It looks like Sword Immortal Omnidirectional will be appearing on news simulcast again, said Zhu Wudao with a smile. Zhu Wudao smiled. This. Wuzhang Shifang looked a little embarrassed. It's not that there were no casualties. 2 ancient sword bearers were killed by Medusa. I'm afraid they won't survive. If that's the case, then it's really too pitiful. The people of Yuzhang will always remember the precious lives they sacrificed for humanity. I hope that Kanzu can guide their souls. Zhu Wudao expressed his condolences without saying anything else. Only 2 ancient sword-bearers died. They were really too lucky. Humph. Tian Songyun snorted coldly and ignored these 2 cold fellows. She jogged all the way to the place where Gohan's statue had fallen. She saw Gohan's miserable appearance. Even though he had become a statue, Gohan's hands and feet were still twisted together like rags. He had completely lost his human form. Only Gohan's head still maintained its original appearance. His eyes were wide open, and his pupils were exposed. It seemed that at the last moment, he had opened his eyes with all his might to preserve his corpse. Sigh, the Gu family is finished. Tian Songyun sighed. She waved the sword chi in her hand, and a 1-meter-deep hole appeared in the ground. At the same time, Gohan's petrified body was lifted by Tian Songyun's sword chi and slowly flew into the newly dug hole. What are you doing? Xianming's voice came from behind. Seeing the 2 sword-bearers talking nonsense, Xianming, who was bored, felt that Tian Songyun's actions were a little strange. She caught up and saw Tian Songyun digging a hole to bury someone. I'm sending off a little guy, letting him rest in peace. I don't want him to be stupidly left in some place and become a target for others to point fingers at. Hearing Tian Songyun say this, Xianming's curiosity was piqued. Xianming had known Tian Songyun for hundreds of years. Xianming had known Tian Songyun since her first awakening. She knew Tian Songyun very well. She had never seen Tian Songyun show grief at the death of a sword-bearer and dig a hole to bury him. This was not Tian Songyun's style at all. Therefore, Xian Ming was very curious about the person Tian Songyun had buried. She walked to the edge of the hole and looked at Gohan's statue. Strange, there was nothing special about this man. He was just a little kid. But his body was really strange, like a rag that was kneaded together. It seems that all the bones in his body are broken. His death is too miserable, Xian Ming exclaimed. This was the most miserable death she had ever seen. Wait, although all the bones in this sword-bearer's body were broken, he was still petrified. This means that he wasn't dead when he was petrified. Tian Songyun was stunned. Xian Ming was right. The Medusa's petrification could only petrify living people. Once this person died, he would be melted into a pool of blood by the death stare. It was impossible for him to be petrified. Moreover, when Gohan received the death stare, he should have used all his strength to open his eyes. This was enough to prove that Gohan wasn't dead when he was petrified. I remember that as long as a person is petrified by the Medusa, his life state will stay at the moment when he is petrified. It's just like the freezing technology of humans. So, even if this human is petrified, he is still alive. As long as the petrification is removed within 24 hours, he can return to the state before he was petrified. Xian Ming's words stunned Tian Songyun again. It was true that the petrified Gohan was still alive. It was like Gohan had been given an immortal buff that could last for 24 hours. Within 24 hours, as long as Gohan was still breathing, he could maintain this breath and not die. From this point of view, the Medusa's petrification didn't kill Gohan. Instead, it saved Gohan's life. Gohan's life could last for 24 hours. This really saved Gohan's life. Tian Songyun was happy at first, but she soon became gloomy. It's useless. To remove the Medusa's petrification, I need the Medusa's blood. Now that the Medusa has escaped, I can't find her within one day. Where can I get her blood? Look, what is this? Xian Ming smiled and raised his hand. There was a patch of blood on it. Seeing this blood, Tian Songyun's eyes instantly became infinitely bright. Is this the Medusa's blood? If it's not hers, is it mine? Xian Ming curled his lips. Just now, my claw grabbed one of her snake heads and my hand scratched her chest. My hand was stained with blood. I felt a little disgusted, so I planned to spray my saliva to wash it off. I didn't expect it to have this effect. Let's go back to the hospital in Yuzhang City immediately, then, Tian Songyun said hurriedly. There's no time to go back. Xian Ming interrupted Tian Songyun's words. At most, in 1 minute, the Medusa's blood on my hand will lose its activity. We must apply it to his body immediately. The hope that they had initially seen seemed to have fallen into a hopeless situation. If they removed the petrified state of the frozen state and returned to the normal frozen state, it would be impossible for them to survive for more than 10 seconds in this wilderness without medical equipment. However, if they went to the hospital first, then the activity of the Medusa's blood would be completely lost. After 24 hours, the frozen state would still mean death. What should he choose? Chapter 264. In the end, Tian Songyun had no choice but to remove Gohan's petrified state. The Medusa's blood was about to expire. Once it expired, Gohan would be petrified for the rest of his life. There was no need to think about the treatment for the time being. It was more important to save Gohan's life. Xian Ming used his bloody claw to wipe Gohan's petrified body. A faint bloody claw mark was left on Gohan's body. Fearing that the blood would not be enough, Tian Songyun asked Xian Ming to leave a few more claw marks on Gohan's body. Xian Ming wiped all the blood on his hand on Gohan's body. Phew, I hope it works. Tian Songyun heaved a long sigh of relief. But in the next second she felt awkward. She suddenly felt that she had forgotten something. Oh no, there's another person who's been petrified. Only then did Amumo remember that Takasaka Rina had also been turned into a statue by the Medusas. When she pulled Takasaka Rina's statue over with her sword aura, Xian Ming had already condensed a clear stream of energy from the void and cleaned up the blood on her claws. Tian Songyun looked at the statue of Takasaka Rina in her hand and asked Xian Ming speechlessly, "What should we do? There's another one here? When are you going to change your forgetful personality? You've lived longer than me since the apocalypse," Xian Ming sighed. "Let's hurry up. I've smeared too much on his chest. There are still a few drops of blood left on this sword-bearer. Smear them on this statue." Tian Songyun lowered her head and saw that the blood marks on Gohan's body had basically merged with his body. There was only one drop of blood left that barely maintained the form of blood. "There's only one drop left. I'm afraid it won't be enough," Tian Songyun said worriedly. "Only one drop left?" Xian Ming smacked his lips and flapped his wings. Rina Takasaka, who was still in Amano Kongimo's arms, flew into the air and quickly pressed down on Gohan's body. How to put it, the current position was a little magical. Rina Takasaka's body was pressed against Gohan's body in the opposite direction, and her lower body was just facing Gohan's face, while her lips were kissing Gohan's crotch. If not for the fact that Gohan's hands and feet were twisted together in a weird way, it would really be a fascinating knowledge. "What are you doing?" Seeing such a shameful posture, Tian Songyun blushed and asked Xian Ming. "Save this woman. Medusa's blood has the best effect when smeared on the lip. There's only one drop of blood left, so naturally, it has to be used on the blade. Who asked this drop of blood to happen to be in between this brother's legs?" "Calm down, what are you so excited about?" "I'm not excited. I'm not calm." Tian Kongimo choked and couldn't speak. "Well, in about a minute, this stone statue will return to its human state. But have you thought about what to do after that?" In his current state, once he returns to his human state, he will die in less than 10 seconds. Xian Ming shook his head as he spoke, as if he didn't have much hope in saving Gohan. However, there was a cunning light in her eyes. Apparently, she already had an idea. She just wanted to see Tian Kongimo make a fool of herself. "Of course, there's a way." Tian Kongimo gradually calmed down, and her intelligence began to rise. "Xian Ming, the one in your family shouldn't be like this one in mine. He doesn't care about cutting off all means of retreat, right?" "I don't know. You can ask him yourself." Xian Ming smiled. "I know." Tian Kongimo's figure flashed and appeared between Wu Hangxi and Zhu Wudao. "Old Wudao, give me your medical pod." "My medical pod? What do you want my medical pod for?" Zhu Wudao was stunned. "To save someone, of course. As the chairman of Yuzhang City's sword committee, shouldn't you save the sword bearers of Yuzhang City?" Tian Kongimo said matter-of-factly. "Well." Zhu Wudao's face stiffened. "My medical pod isn't very convenient. Is there any other way to save him?" Zhu Wudao really didn't want to use his medical pod to save other sword bearers. He was a person who cared about his reputation. Once his medical pod was used by someone else, he would never use it again, no matter what. It would be fine if his medical pod was an ordinary one, but the problem was that Zhu Wudao's medical pod was made with all kinds of precious materials and advanced technology. It was a medical pod specially made for sword bearers of the immortal sword realm. Its functions were much more advanced than the medical pods used by ordinary sword bearers. Unless the person was already dead or had exhausted his lifespan, as long as the person was still breathing, this medical pod could save the person. The production of such medical pods was very poor. Even sword bearers of the immortal sword realm could only get one. If it was broken and they wanted to replace it, they would have to go to the World Committee of the Sword Committee in Yanjing City to get it. Yuzhang City didn't have the technology to produce such medical pod. The process was so complicated that even sword bearers of the immortal sword realm would feel that they couldn't handle it and wouldn't want to ask for a second one. How could Zhu Wudao be willing to use such a precious medical pod for an ancient sword-bearer? There's no other way. Once the petrification is lifted, the sword-bearer will die if he doesn't receive treatment within 10 seconds. Within a radius of dozens of miles, only you, old man Wudao, have a medical pod. Other than you, I can't find anyone else. From the bottom of his heart, Zhu Wudao didn't want to give it to an ancient sword-bearer. If he died, so be it. It wasn't a big deal. However, Zhu Wudao couldn't refuse Tian Songyun's request. He looked at Wuzhang Shifang and gestured for him to say a few words. Don't look at me, Senior Wudao. You know me. I never carry a medical pod with me, Wuzhang Shifang replied. I know you don't have one, Zhu Wudao said impatiently. Anyway, you don't need a medical pod. Leave the one that the sword committee gave you at home to collect dust. I'll use mine this time. You can return it to me in a few days. This medical pod was taken by your sword mistress, so it should fall on you. No, no, no. Wuzhang Shifang waved his hands. This sword-bearer is from Yuzhang City, not from Yanjing City. No matter what, Yuzhang City should be responsible for it. The two immortal sword-bearers shamelessly pushed the responsibility away. Seeing that a minute was about to pass, and that Gohan was about to recover from his petrified state, Tian Songyun was anxious. Zhu Wudao, do you believe that I will tell everyone what you just said? I will make the media in Yanjing City proud of you. They are very interested in the news that Yuzhang City's sword committee chairman disregarded the life and death of a sword-bearer for a medical pod. Tian Songyun opened her mouth and gave Zhu Wudao a critical hit. Zhu Wudao could imagine that if this news got out, although his position in Yuzhang City wouldn't be shaken, his reputation would be tarnished. Giving up the life of a brave sword-bearer for a medical pod, no matter how you looked at it, would be scolded to death. Moreover, the person who spread this news was an immortal sword-bearer. The reputation of a sword mistress was extremely good in the hearts of the people. Naturally, a sword mistress would not lie. Thinking about it, Zhu Wudao was really terrified. Take it. Take it. Goddess of damnation, this matter is settled. Don't let it get out. Zhu Wudao decisively threw his medical pod out of his dimensional pocket. Tian Songyun rolled her eyes at Zhu Wudao and didn't reply. Sword Chi carried the medical pod and ran to Gohan's side. Hey, Sword Immortal Shifang, your sword mistress's heart seems to have gone to someone else. You don't mind, do you? Zhu Wudao, who had been disgusted by Tian Songyun, definitely wanted to get revenge from Wuzhang Shifang. Wuzhang Shifang wasn't angry when he heard Zhu Wudao's mockery. Instead, he smiled and asked Zhu Wudao, Senior Baiju, may I ask if your Xuanming's heart is on you? #yen %. Zhu Wudao was speechless. When Tian Songyun brought the medical pod back to Gohan's side, Gohan had already changed from stone to human form. Fortunately, he still has a trace of vitality in his body. Tian Songyun only glanced at Gohan and confirmed that he was still alive. However, his body's vitality was getting weaker and weaker, and he could die at any time. Hurry up and put him in the medical pod. Tian Songyun's sword chi hit the button of the medical pod. The medical pod opened immediately and began to automatically inject a green liquid. There's no hurry. Straighten his limbs first. Otherwise, even if he comes back to life, the bones in his limbs will be deformed. Xian Ming was more experienced in saving people. She reminded Tian Songyun to give Gohan's limbs to Fangjing first. The medical pod's purpose was to repair the sword wielder's damaged body as quickly as possible. It would quickly heal and repair according to the way it was placed in the medical pod. If it wasn't straightened in advance, Gohan's limbs would probably never be able to stretch his limbs for the rest of his life. At that moment, Gohan's limbs gave people the feeling that they were boneless chicken fillets. Tian Songyun carefully and quickly arranged his limbs neatly. Then, with a wave of sword chi, he was automatically sent into the medical pod. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. There was a rapid alarm sound, and the medical pod's display screen began to flash bright red, which meant that Gohan's body was indeed on the verge of collapsing at any time. However, this medical pod was a medical pod specially used by sword immortals. Its quality and medical effects were superb. After thinking for a while, the medical pod's alarm was completely extinguished. The alert red also turned into a softer yellow, which meant that Gohan had officially passed the most dangerous period. His body gradually began to recover, and life returned to Gohan's body. Chapter 265. Damn it, Senior Baiju and I are going to Yuzhang City for a while. Let's go. Wuzhang Shifang and Wu Dao whispered to each other for a while, and then asked Tian Songyun to go to Yuzhang City with him. Oh, let's go. Tian Songyun nodded. With a sweep of sword chi, the medical pod containing Gohan's body floated behind her. It seemed like Tian Songyun planned to bring Gohan to Yuzhang City with her. Damn it, what are you doing? Why are you bringing the medical pod? Wuzhang Shifang's face darkened. Put it down. We have to fly all the way back to Yuzhang City. What's with the medical pod? But Gohan's body is still. Tian Songyun wanted to say that Gohan needed someone to take care of him, but before she could say it, she heard Wu Dao say, Hey, Sword Immortal Shifang, don't get too worked up. Lady Kusanagi is kind and cares about this swordsman. Since Lady Kusanagi likes this little man, let her carry the medical pod. It's not a big deal. Who cares about a swordsman? Let's go. Tian Songyun put Gohan's medical pod back on the ground. If she really brought Gohan's medical pod back, wouldn't Wu Dao's words be true? Moreover, Tian Songyun realized that she cared too much about Gohan. Wasn't he just the descendant of that heartless person? Why did she care so much? He didn't care about her at all. She didn't look like an immortal swordsman at all when she brought the medical pod with her. Thinking of this, Tian Songyun decisively put Gohan's medical pod down. But after a few seconds, Gohan's medical pod was pulled up by the sword chi again. After a few seconds it was put down again. It seemed like Tian Songyun was in a dilemma. Actually, it's fine to put it here. The immortal swordsman's medical pod is made of dimensional crystals. It can defend against all attacks from Yuan Ko that are dragon level and below. It's impossible for a dragon level or above Yuan Ko to appear here in a short period of time. Moreover, the camp has already received news that Medusa has escaped. In 10 minutes, our people will return here. I've specifically told them that when they return, someone will take care of this med bay. Zhu Wudao added, which could be considered as helping Tian Songyun make the decision. Let's go. The medical pod was placed on the ground. Tian Songyun was the first one to leave this broken mineral lode. Zhu Wudao looked at Wu Zhangshi, who had a green head. He smiled and took Xianming away. Wuzhang Shifang, who was left behind, stared at Gohan in the medical cabin for a moment before catching up with Zhu Wudao. All the people in the open space left in an instant, and the place suddenly became deserted. 10 minutes later, Zhu Wudao, who was flying side by side with Wuzhang Shifang in the air and was about to return to Yuzhang City, received a call. What did you say? You didn't find the medical pod? Zhu Wudao's expression changed slightly when he heard the content of the communication. On the other end of the communication was the person in charge of the Luoting mineral lode. After they had rushed back to the mineral lode, they had searched the entire mineral lode, but they couldn't find the medical pod, let alone Gohan, who was in the medical pod. Since this task was assigned by Zhu Wudao, the person in charge did not dare to neglect it. He immediately got in touch with Zhu Wudao and told him the news. Immediately mobilize your forces to search the vicinity, but keep this news to yourself. Don't tell anyone else. Do you understand? Zhu Wudao's expression returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. He didn't inform Tian Songyun and Wu Zhangshi. Zhu Wudao concealed this matter. In his opinion, the disappearance of the sword-bearer was not a big deal. If he told the other two, it would be a big problem. It would be an act of asking for trouble. So, where was the medical pod that contained Gohan's body at this time? The answer was in a forest with birds chirping and flowers fragrant. This was one of the rare quiet places in the Mei Ling mountain range. The mine exploration team had explored this place more than 10 times and came to the conclusion that there was absolutely no mineral lode in this area. If there was no mineral lode, there would be no harm. Since there was nothing worth coveting, humans would not bother to come to this place at all. Places like this were places where Yuan Ko appeared very frequently. What if they encountered Yuan Ko and got killed? Who could they reason with? Therefore, this place had become an area with a very well-preserved forest environment in the Miling mountain range. There were many trees, and the jungle was dense. As far as the eye could see, there were dense trees and flowers, and one could not even see clearly dozens of meters away. Gohan's medical pod was placed in such an extremely hidden place. The display panel of the medical pod showed a countdown of 2:23, which meant that Gohan's body would be completely restored in 2.5 minutes. Gohan would also escape death and return to normal. Time passed by, and when the panel finally showed 00:00, the lid of the medical pod opened with a whoosh. Almost in the next second, a lively Gohan jumped out of the medical pod. After coming back to life, Gohan moved his body and found that his physical condition could be said to be terrible. Previously, he had to waste more than half a year to reopen the meridians in his left hand because of his broken left hand. But now, almost all the meridians in Gohan's body had been reformatted, and the acupoints that he had previously opened were all tightly closed. This meant that although Gohan had a body full of sword essence, his strength had almost returned to the state of a child. In other words, he had lost all his martial arts as described in wuxia novels. However, Gohan did not blame anyone. Instead, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. In fact, when Gohan's body was bitten by the giant snake and he faintly heard the conversation between Tian Tsongyun and Medusa, he used the last bit of his body to open his eyes so that he would be petrified instead of turning into a pool of blood. At that time, Gohan had already regarded himself as a dead man in his heart. He opened his eyes only because he was unwilling to die just like that. He wanted to make one last gamble. However, he also understood in his heart that this was just a gamble. There was a 99% chance that he would die in the hands of Medusa. From then on, his short life would come to an end. The deep hatred of his parents, as well as the various great wishes he had made, would become a complete joke. Gohan never thought that he would be able to open his eyes again. He would be able to feel the real existence of his body again. This new life gave Gohan a sudden sense of release from the bottom of his heart. People who had died once often viewed things from a different perspective than those who had never experienced death before. Suddenly, Gohan heard this sentence, "Gohan, it seems that your body is recovering well." However, Gohan was not surprised. The moment he stepped out of the medical pod, he saw Rina Takasaka sitting on a fallen tree. Her face was full of smiles. "Although my body is not as good as before, I've never felt so good before." Gohan took a deep breath of the fresh air in the forest. "Rina Takasaka, was it you who saved me? You can say that." Rina Takasaka was still smiling. "At least, I was the one who brought you here. Where is this place?" Gohan looked around and realized that he was surrounded by a dense forest. Most of the towering trees were 5 to 6 stories tall. Trees could only grow to such a height in a place without human activity. It seemed that this was a place with few people. Strange, why would he appear in a place like this? A trace of doubt flashed in Gohan's heart. This place, this environment gave him an ominous feeling. At the same time, Gohan suddenly realized that Rina Takasaka was giving him a different feeling than before. In the past, Rina Takasaka was a shy girl who did not even dare to look Gohan in the eye. But now, not only could Reina Takasaka look straight into Guhan's eyes, there was no shyness in her eyes at all. Instead, there was a kind of determination towards her own beliefs. It seems that Reina Takasaka has become a lot more mature after going through this crisis. Guhan sighed. At this moment, he did not suspect anything. Guhan, your body seems to be recovering well. I wonder if your violet palace and the sword mark are all right? Reina Takasaka asked. They're fine. Guhan looked at his violet palace and saw that the sword mark from Qingpin's sword was still intact. It seemed that Qingpin was fine as well. At the thought of Qingpin, Guhan's heart skipped a beat. He touched his back and found that the scabbard was empty. There was nothing inside. Where was his Qingpin? Where was his cute sword mistress, Qingpin? Reina Takasaka, did you see my sword mistress, Qingpin, when you saved me? Guhan could only ask Reina Takasaka. Qingpin is here. Reina Takasaka took out a long sword from her back. When Guhan saw that it was indeed his Qingpin, he immediately felt relieved. Thank you, Takasaka-san. I'll go crazy without Qingpin. Guhan did not hide his fondness for Qingpin at all, especially when he said that he would go crazy without Qingpin. A trace of emotion flashed in Reina Takasaka's eyes, but it was only for a brief moment. Soon, Reina Takasaka's eyes returned to their original resolute state. Come back, Qingpin. Guhan wanted to summon Qingpin back to him through the sword mark, but something strange happened. No matter how hard Guhan tried, Qingpin did not move an inch in Reina Takasaka's hand. It had no intention of returning to him. What's going on? Is Qingpin injured? Is its durability at 0? Takasaka-san, please return my Qingpin to me. A few terrifying guesses popped up in Guhan's mind. He quickly stood up and tried to take his Qingpin back from Reina Takasaka. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Reina Takasaka's face darkened. The sword flashed like a bolt of lightning, and blood gushed out of Guhan's outstretched right hand. Other than his thumb, all of his fingers were severed. And what had severed Guhan's finger was none other than the Qingpin in Reina Takasaka's hand. There was nothing to doubt, because right now, on the blade of the poor sword, the blood that came from the solid cold was still dripping drop by drop. Guhan had never imagined that Qingpin would be stained with his blood. In that instant Guhan felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Chapter 266. Why? Even though Guhan had a vague feeling that something was wrong with Reina Takasaka, he was certain that he had been tricked when his fingers were cut off. Guhan had always prided himself on his intelligence, but he never expected that he would be tricked. I just want to borrow something from you, Reina Takasaka replied seriously. What is it? Do you want to borrow my head? Hearing Reina Takasaka's words, Guhan was suddenly reminded of a common plot in many novels. Whenever an assassin rose from the ground, they would always say, I want to borrow your head. No, I don't want your head, nor do I want your life. Reina Takasaka shook her head, denying Guhan's guess. That's interesting. Since you don't want my life, could it be that you want my body? Without waiting for Reina Takasaka's reply, Guhan smiled bitterly and answered himself. You don't look like someone who wants me, or else you wouldn't have cut off 4 of my fingers. How pitiful! I just crawled out of the coffin after my broken meridians and bones were healed, but in the blink of an eye, I lost another 4 fingers. Guhan took out a bottle of hemostasis powder from his dimensional pocket and sprinkled it on the wound on his finger. In just a moment, the wound healed. Takasaki-san, I'm someone who has died once, and I know how precious life is. Tell me, what do you want? As long as I have it, you can take it. I won't resist. Guhan laughed bitterly. At this moment, the meridians in his body were blocked and one of his hands was crippled. Since Qingqiu was not by his side, Guhan could be said to be in his weakest state. He had no strength to resist at all. I want your sword mark. After hesitating for a moment, Rina Takasaka decided to tell Gohan what she wanted. I want to cut off your sword mark and take this Chinpin sword. Your target is the Chinpin sword. Gohan's pupils shrunk as all the hairs on his body stood on end. A wave of anger erupted from Gohan's body. I, Gohan, have everything on me, it's fine if you want to take it. The only thing that matters is my poverty. If you want to take it away, you will have to take my life as well. I said, I don't want your life. She stared into Gohan's eyes with a hint of sincerity. Gohan, you're a good person. I don't want your life. Moreover, that person did not instruct me to take your life. Were you sent by someone? Gohan let out a long sigh. He could feel the immense power coming from Rina Takasaka. Even if Gohan was at his peak, he wouldn't be able to deal with her, let alone now that he had lost 99% of his strength. The helplessness he felt when facing Rina Takasaka was similar to the helplessness he felt when facing Medusa. If you're not in a hurry to kill me, why don't we have a chat? Gohan seemed to have calmed down as he pleaded with Rina Takasaka. Alright, let's chat for a while, even though we don't have anything to talk about. Rina Takasaka nodded and added, if you're trying to buy time to contact Liunianling to save you, please give up on that idea. I've already blocked all communications in the vicinity. You won't be able to contact anyone with your gadget. Gohan smiled awkwardly. I didn't expect you to notice that. Fine, let's have a sincere chat. Okay. Rina Takasaka nodded again without saying anything else. First, I want to confirm something. You're not a swordsman, or rather, you're not even human. You're Yuan Ko, am I right? Gohan revealed a huge piece of news the moment he opened his mouth. Hearing Gohan's words, Rina Takasaka's slightly surprised expression betrayed her. You're right. I'm a Yuan Ko. Actually, I should have thought of this when Chinpin was in your hands and couldn't return to her sword. When the sword lady's main body comes into contact with the Yuan Ho, she won't be able to return to her sword. I can't believe I forgot about this. Gohan smiled bitterly, explaining how he managed to guess that Rina Takasaka was a Yuan Ho. You're smart, smarter than most people I've met. Rina Takasaka's tone was as sincere as ever. Then let me ask you a few more questions. How did you get into the base city? Do you have the ability to paralyze the entire Yuan Ko identification system in Yuzhong City? That was the strangest question Gohan had. Gohan had seen Rina Takasaka on the first day of school. She was the girl who cried that she wanted to reconcile with Kumiko Huangmei. Yuzhong City had the strictest Yuan Ko detection system. Unless it was a flood level or desolate level Yuan Ko, there was no way any other Yuan Ko could hide from the Yuan Ko detection system in Yuzhong City, not to mention Yuzhong University, the place where swordsmen were trained. That was why Gohan had never suspected that Rina Takasaka was a Yuan Ko. I'm a Yuan Ko. Yuan Ko can't enter Yuzhong City. Rina Takasaka shook her head. I got on the bus after you left the city. I remember now. That wild boar spirit. You were the one who arranged that. Gohan recalled the battle that had caused them to suddenly stop, as well as the wild boar spirit that had caused everyone to panic. Perhaps it was then that the swordsman, Rina Takasaka, was swapped with this Yuan Ko Rina Takasaka. What a deep trap! For the sake of my poverty you actually went to this extent. Only then did Gohan realize that from the moment he left the city, he had been tricked by an invisible hand. Putting everything else aside, the four swordsmen who attacked the wild boar spirit were probably in cahoots with Rina Takasaka. No, Gohan was no longer sure if the woman in front of him was called Rina Takasaka. I'm curious, are you really Rina Takasaka? Gohan asked with a bitter smile. I'm not. Rina Takasaka hesitated for a long time before answering. Gohan could tell that this was an answer that had been carefully thought out. At the same time, it was an answer that hid many secrets. Then, what happened to the real Rina Takasaka? And who are you? Gohan asked one question after another. The real Rina Takasaka is in a safe place. Once this mission is over, she will return to her normal life. It doesn't matter what my name is. Just call me Rina Takasaka. I'm used to it for now. Alright, Rina Takasaka. My last question. Gohan stood up and took out a sword from his dimensional pocket. Don't be mistaken. Gohan had not synchronized with his sword yet. It was just an ordinary iron sword, something that Gohan used to practice swordsmanship when he was young. Gohan never imagined that it would be his last weapon. Miss Rina Takasaka, is the person behind you a human? Gohan asked in a loud voice as he pointed the sword at Rina Takasaka. Rina Takasaka did not reply. As the saying went, silence was acquiescence. It seemed that the power behind Rina Takasaka really did come from within the human race. It was not hard to guess. The power behind Rina Takasaka wanted Ching Pin. The reason they were interested in Ching Pin was probably because of Ching Pin's mystical power and special ability. Otherwise, no power would target an ancient sword like Rina Takasaka. Ching Pin's mystical power must have been leaked a long time ago, at least before Gohan left the city. If Rina Takasaka was backed by Yuan Ko, then where did Yuan Ko find out about Ching Pin's mystical power? Gohan had never brought Ching Pin out of the city before. Only humans would discover Ching Pin's mystical power through small clues. Only humans would want to snatch Ching Pin away. If it was really Yuan Ko, they would just destroy him. There was no need to waste so much effort to snatch her away. Let's end our chat here. I'm going to cut off your sword mark. Takasaka Rina sighed, and Gohan's heart skipped a beat. He immediately turned around and ran, trying to escape from the forest, but it was futile. A powerful wind pressure gushed out from Takasaka Rina's body. The wind instantly pressed Gohan to the ground. Without the sword chi and Rina Takasaka, Gohan was only slightly stronger than an ordinary person. He was unable to resist the wind pressure at all. He was firmly pressed to the ground, unable to even move his few remaining fingers. Rina Takasaka slowly walked up to Gohan and squatted down beside Gohan. She slowly took out an emerald dagger from her dimensional pocket. When he saw the dagger, fear appeared in Gohan's eyes, along with curiosity and confusion. Green silk severing. You're using green silk severing. There were two ways to cut off Gohan and Ching Pin. The first was to kill Gohan. Once the wielder was dead, the sword maiden would lose control and return to her slumber. The second was to forcefully destroy the sword mark left by the wielder and the sword maiden. The main method was to have a wielder of famed swords or above control the sword chi to enter Gohan's mind palace and destroy the sword mark. The drawback of doing this was mentioned a long time ago. This would cause the sword wielder to forever lose a sword maiden. This was an irreparable damage. Only green silk severing could perfectly cut off the sword mark and allow the wielder to choose a new sword maiden. This was equivalent to changing Gohan to a new sword maiden. It was much better than losing a sword maiden forever. The value of green silk severing could no longer be measured in RMB. Gohan could not understand what kind of organization would use green silk severing to cut off his own sword mark. In a sense, this organization treated Gohan as if he was their own son. In fact, they even treated him better than their own son. Even a great Confucian family would not bear to give a treasure like green silk severing to their direct descendant. Wait a minute, this is not the main point. What is Gohan thinking? No matter how precious green silk severing was, could it be more precious than his precious Ching Pin? The fear in Gohan's eyes grew bigger and bigger as the green silk severing approached him. No. I beg you. Rina. No, I can't live without Ching Pin. I beg you. I can't live without Ching Pin. This was probably the first time in Gohan's life that he was begging someone. Take my life. Take my life. Take my life and Ching Pin. This is my last wish. Gohan was in complete despair. How could he have imagined that he would be in such a hopeless situation twice in a day? I'm sorry. Rina Takasaka sighed as she looked at the pleading Gohan. Then, the wind pressure turned into 2 wind thorns and pierced into Gohan's acupoints. Gohan's eyes widened and he fainted. Now you can rest assured and cut off your sword mark. I'm sorry, Gohan. With that, Rina Takasaka sent green silk severing into Gohan's mind palace. Chapter 267. Although Reina Takasaka did not hesitate to stab the severed hair into the frozen Zifu, her heart was filled with guilt. She felt that she had killed the father of a child who loved him dearly for the sake of taking away a cute child. However, nothing in the world would change according to one's will. Rina Takasaka had to do this, and there was no reason for her to do it. After the green thread entered Gohan's purple palace, Rina Takasaka didn't need to do anything else. It would automatically cut off the mark left by Gohan's sword. Rina Takasaka's eyes were fixed on the Chinpin sword on the ground. As long as the light on the Chinpin sword completely disappeared, the Chinpin sword would become ownerless again. It would be able to coordinate with the new sword wielder. This was Rina Takasaka's goal. Soon, the light on the surface of the Chinpin sword started to flicker intensely. This should be the sign of the green thread severing. This was the first time Rina Takasaka hadn't used the green thread severing. In fact, it had been decades since a tycoon had used the green thread severing. Rina Takasaka's understanding of the green thread severing was limited to simple words. She thought that the flickering light was just a sign that the green thread severing was working. Soon, Rina Takasaka realized that she was wrong. After a while, not only did the light start to flicker, but the entire Chinpin sword also started to tremble. The Chinpin sword on the ground was like a fish out of water. It started to jump up and down, and it even jumped higher and higher. In the end, it could jump more than a meter high. How can this be? Didn't the information say that the whole process was fast and quiet? How can this be? Rina Takasaka had a bad feeling when she saw the abnormal behavior of the Chinpin sword. This was going to be bad. Let's return our line of sight to Gohan's purple palace. The green severed hair pierced through Gohan's abdomen as if it was piercing the surface of the water. Then, it easily entered Gohan's purple palace, but it didn't leave a single scar on Gohan's skin. The dark green severed black hair was like a swimming fish. It constantly wandered in Gohan's purple palace. It seemed to be looking for the location of Chinpin's sword scar. Wait a minute, you're asking why the severed black hair is green? I'm not sure about that, just like I'm not sure why some hats are green. Very smoothly, the green silk cutter found the sword mark of Chinpin in Gohan's Zifu. It looked exactly the same as the original Chinpin sword. It was a slightly solidified sword with a blood groove on it. After discovering the sword mark, the green silk cutter's jade-like body flashed with light. Then, with a speed 10 times faster than before, it shot toward the sword mark of Chinpin. According to the information, after the green silk cutter found the sword mark, it would start working from the tip of the sword mark. It was like a crossover game that children in kindergarten played. The green silk cutter would start from the tip of the sword mark and color the sword mark. The so-called color painting was actually using the gas that formed the sword mark to dye it green. Once the entire sword mark turned green, it would completely melt like snow and disappear from Gohan's purple palace. The green silk cutter was like a crayon covered in a virus. Once the virus destroyed the entire sword mark, the sword mark would completely die. Just like the information said, the first thing the green silk cutter did was to rush to the tip of the sword mark. It planned to start its green journey from the tip of the sword mark. However, something strange happened. When the green silk cutter was only a little bit away from Chinpin's sword mark, it could no longer reach the sword mark. It was as if the surface of the sword mark had an additional defensive barrier. After several fruitless attempts to approach it, the green silk cutter decided to force its way through. After all, the green silk cutter itself was a sharp dagger. The green silk cutter retreated a little, then suddenly exerted force and stabbed at the sword mark. It was really effective. This time, the green silk cutter felt that it was much closer to the sword mark. Therefore, the green silk cutter made up her mind to try to break through the outer layer of defense through continuous collisions. The result of such continuous collisions was reflected in Qingpin's body. Qingpin began to jump continuously like a living fish. Every jump meant that Qingpin's sword mark had been hit once. The height of the jump represented the force of the impact that Qingpin had endured. Finally, when Qingpin jumped to a height higher than Rina Takasaka, she stopped jumping and lay quietly on the ground again. This meant that the layer of defense on the surface of Qingpin's sword mark had shattered. The last barrier that was obstructing the green silk cutter's work was completely gone. When the green silk cutter saw that the barrier had finally been broken, it seemed to be a little excited. It danced up and down in the purple mansion for a while, then regrouped and once again set out for the tip of the sword mark. Without any obstruction, the green silk cutter finally came into contact with the sword mark. It successfully left a green mark on the sword mark. This meant that Gohan's sword mark was gradually being corroded by the green silk cutter's virus, and the sword mark was about to melt. Unfortunately, Gohan, whose acupoint had been stimulated by Rina Takasaka, had fallen into a coma and was unable to stop this from happening. However, Gohan wasn't the only target of the sword mark. There was another person who was also suffering from the sword mark's collapse. It hurts. 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 When the first green color was engraved, the poor sword's sword form instantly turned back into its cute form. It hugged its stomach and began to roll on the ground. Clearly, the damage caused by the green silk cutter was directly reflected on Qingpin's body. Strange, Qingpin's durability is clearly less than 10%. It's impossible for her to revert to her sword maiden form. Rina Takasaka was shocked when she saw Qingpin suddenly revert to her adorable form. In the battle with Medusa, Qingpin's sword had blocked one of Medusa's snake heads. That was an attack from the Ian grade Yuan Ko. With Qingpin's ancient sword-grade body, it was impossible for her to withstand such an attack. Therefore, the protective barrier around Qingpin's sword instantly collapsed, and the remaining damage was absorbed by her durability. According to Rina Takasaka's judgment, Qingpin's durability was definitely less than 10%. Once a sword maiden's durability was less than 10%, the wielder could only forcefully activate the sword mark and force her to maintain her sword maiden form. Without the wielder's forceful command, the sword maiden could only maintain her sword form. It was impossible for her to revert to her sword maiden form. But now, Qingpin's durability was less than 10%, and yet she took the initiative to transform into her sword maiden form. It was simply too illogical. It hurts. It hurts so much. Qingpin is going to die from the pain. Qingpin, who had been maintaining her adorable appearance, began to writhe and grind on the ground. The immense pain made Qingpin struggle on the ground. Her cute little head began to hammer the hard ground with all her might, and a red bruise appeared on her forehead. She dug holes in the ground with her palms, completely ignoring the blood on her hands. Her crocodile clothes were already in tatters from being rubbed on the ground, and pieces of white cotton were leaking out of the holes. The ground was covered in white, as if it was snowing heavily. All in all, the current poverty was like Sun Wukong, who had been chanted the band-tightening spell by Xuanzang. The intense pain made her lose her mind. She could only torture her body, abuse her flesh, and use the pain in her body to fight against the pain from the sword mark. There was no doubt that Qingpin was in hellish pain, and the pain had exceeded the limit of what her small body could endure. Gradually, Qingpin's movements and extent of struggle began to lessen. It wasn't because the pain from the sword mark had lessened, but because Qingpin no longer had the strength to torture herself. She could only lie on the ground powerlessly, her tender flesh twisting in a strange manner. She let out pitiful and weak moans as she silently endured the pain. When the last blank spot of the sword mark in Gohan's mind palace turned green, Qingpin finally calmed down. Her muscles were no longer twisting, her legs were no longer twitching, her eyes were no longer rolling, and her mouth was closed. It seemed that she had completely returned to normal. However, Reina Takasaka was unable to sense any vitality from this seemingly normal, impoverished girl. This once adorable little foodie had completely turned into a doll at this moment. It was as if she had lost her soul, a doll that only knew how to maintain a fixed smile in the arms of a little girl. Is it over? Reina Takasaka could sense that the severed green thread in Gohan's mind palace had stopped moving, and at the same time, it sent a signal to her. This was the signal that the severed green thread was about to leave Gohan's mind palace. After destroying the sword mark, the severed green thread would automatically leave the wielder's mind palace. Reina Takasaka had to bring the severed green thread back. Otherwise, the Leonian family behind her would suffer a great loss. The severed green thread could be said to be a one-time use item, but it could also be said to be a non-one-time use item. It was a one-time use item because after it was used once, it could not be used a second time for at least 100 years. It was also not a one-time use item because after 100 years, if the severed green thread was recharged with a prince seed, it could be used again. Therefore, Reina Takasaka had to bring the severed green thread back to the Leonian family. If she lost it, she would have to bear the consequences that she could not bear. In Gohan's mind palace, the originally dark green severed green thread was now almost white. This meant that all the green on her body had been painted on Gohan's sword mark. At this time, Zhang Qingxi seemed to be somewhat exhausted. She slowly swam towards the periphery of the Zifu, just like a leisurely tuna. After swimming for a while, Zhang Qingxi suddenly stopped. The little dagger stared blankly at the green sword mark on Qingpin's body. The severed green thread couldn't understand why the sword mark had not melted yet. It should have started melting after she finished painting it. Could it be that there was still a place that she hadn't painted? The green silk slayer hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, 2 silver chains shot out from the dark green sword mark. With lightning speed, they bound the green silk slayer and dragged it into the sword mark. Not good. Reina Takasaka's face froze. She suddenly could not feel the severed green thread in Gohan's body. Chapter 268. Before using the green severing silk, Reina Takasaka had soaked it in her blood for an hour so that the green severing silk would be infused with her own spirituality, allowing her to sense the existence of the green severing silk through this spirituality. But now, the severed green hair was gone. She could no longer sense the existence of the severed green hair in Gohan's body. It was a sad thing. She had no idea what was happening to Gohan's body, but she knew that if she did not find the severed green hair, that person from the Leonian family would not let her off. But now, the severed green hair had disappeared from Gohan's purple palace. She could not enter Gohan's purple palace to find the severed green hair. It was not that she could not. If she cut open Gohan's abdomen and forcefully opened his purple palace, that was the only way she could find the severed green hair. This was the only way she could retrieve her severed black hair. Other than that, she couldn't think of any other way to open up her frozen violet palace to retrieve her lost, severed black hair. I'm sorry, Gohan-san. This is all I can do. Once she cut open Gohan's purple palace, even if Gohan's life could be saved in time, the damage to the purple palace was not something that could not be healed by the purple palace. Without the purple palace, she would not be able to store the sword essence or the sword mark. Gohan's life as a sword wielder would come to an end. From then on, he could only live as an ordinary person. To Gohan, this was worse than death. However, she had no other choice. If she did not find the severed green hair, her life would come to an end, or something even more horrifying. Reina Takasaka waved both her hands, and with Rina Takasaka at the center, a gigantic vortex of air began to form. Rina Takasaka was compressing the surrounding air, causing it to condense in her hand. It was hard to imagine just how much air Takasaka Rina had compressed. It felt like a strong wind was blowing through the entire forest. Even the tall trees were bent by the wind. With Takasaka Rina at the center, a medium-sized tornado was formed. That's right, a tornado. Unlike Yuan Ko and the Sword Lady, who simply used the flow of wind to form tornadoes, they only used the power of nature itself, so it was not too difficult. On the other hand, Rina Takasaka was different. She used her own strength to compress the air to form a tornado. As the amount of compressed air increased, the amount of strength required would increase as well. To form a medium-sized tornado like Rina Takasaka was not something that Yuan Ko, who was below dragon level, could do. When Takasaka Rina had absorbed enough air, the tornado dissipated. At the same time, a sword visible to the naked eye appeared in Takasaka Rina's hand. However, this was not a real sword. Instead, it was a solid sword formed from compressed air. Compressing air into a solid sword. Just thinking about it was a terrifying thing. Although humans could also compress air into a solid through technology, it could only be done in an extremely low-temperature environment. Unlike Takasaka Rina, who used a huge amount of strength to compress air into a solid at room temperature, this was a terrifying power. If Wuzhang Shifang or Zhu Wudao were here, they would at least give Takasaka Rina Takasaka a nether-level Yuan Ko the moment they saw the air sword. This was an existence equivalent to a human spirit sword-level sword wielder. I'm sorry. Takasaka Rina bowed to Gohan again and apologized. Her apology was sincere, and so were her actions. The air-compressed sword only touched Gohan's clothes lightly, and the clothes made of strong materials were easily cut open, revealing Gohan's snow-white belly that had just been repaired. At this moment, Takasaka Rina only needed to make a light cut on Gohan's belly, and Gohan's stomach would be cut open like a cesarean section, revealing his internal organs and the mysterious purple mansion in his dantian. I must get my severed black hair back, Takasaka Rina muttered to herself. Her hand did not tremble at all as she steadily pressed the air sword against Gohan's skin. In the next second, Takasaka Rina would make a cut along the central axis. Go to hell. Don't you dare hurt my Gohan. At this crucial moment, a childish voice shouted. Then, Takasaka Rina felt her stomach being poked, and her body fell backward. This is impossible. Takasaka Rina was dumbfounded when she saw the guy who poked her stomach. This person was actually Chinpin, the Chinpin who was in so much pain that he wanted to die and was rolling on the ground in pain. Impossible! Impossible! Reina Takaban had yet to recover from her shock. Impossible, I've already cut off your sword mark. You don't have a sword wielder anymore, so how can you still move? Oh, so it's you, bad woman. Chinpin was in so much pain just now, and you even wanted to destroy Chinpin's sword mark. You're really a bad woman. Listen to me, you evil woman. I won't allow you to hurt my Gohan. Even if you want to beat or scold me, only I, Chinpin, can do it. No one else will. Poor lady was not tall, but when she held the poor sword in her hand and stood in front of Gohan, she actually had the aura of one man holding the pass against 10,000 enemies. Even Takasaka Rina was shocked by this aura. Of course, this was impossible. Takasaka Rina looked at Chinpin as if she was caring for Aqua. Chinpin, move aside. I don't need to hurt you. No, Chinpin won't allow it. Chinpin won't allow it. Facing Takasaka Rina, who was at least at the nether level, Yuan Ko, the little sword mistress Chinpin chose to take the initiative to attack. She waved her Chinpin sword and staggered toward Takasaka Rina. Takasaka Rina did not retaliate against Chinpin's attack. Instead, she allowed Chinpin to slash at her. There was a wind wall around her, and Qingpin's weak attacks were bounced back the moment they came close to the wind wall. Qingpin slashed at her more than a dozen times, but she was bounced back more than a dozen times and tumbled more than a dozen times. "Do I look like an annoying villain?" Takasaka Rina sighed inwardly. That's right, Takasaka Rina was already an annoying villain, but who could understand the pain and helplessness in her heart? Perhaps it was because she felt ashamed in her heart, but she didn't retaliate against pitiful priest's laughable and powerless counterattack. She simply stood where she was and allowed pitiful priest to swing his sword again and again, bounce back, fall, and then swing his sword again, bounce back, fall, and repeat this seemingly incomparably bitter process. In the end, Qingpin stopped attacking. Qingpin was too tired. Qingpin's arm was already swollen after swinging her sword over 100 times. Qingpin no longer had the strength to swing her sword. "Qingpin, you're tired too. Take a break," Takasaka Rina advised when she saw Qingpin's arm drooping weakly. "No. Never." Qingpin's body was swaying as if she would fall at any moment, but her reply was still firm. Poor Qing no longer had the strength to attack. At this time, her face, which was used to act cute, was filled with the word determination, which was rarely seen. "If you want to hurt Gohan, you'll have to step over Qingpin's dead body." This sentence had been said by the protagonists in countless television dramas and movies, and it didn't sound new at all. But when it came from Qingpin's mouth, it had a different feeling. In a desperate situation, she could only rely on a 1-2-meter-tall child to block the enemy with her own body. How tragic was that? Qingpin laid her small body on Gohan's bare belly. Her eyes were closed, and her face was pressed against Gohan's chest. That was because she could hear Gohan's heartbeat. Gohan's heartbeat. Qingpin loves it the most, Qingpin muttered to herself. I can't delay any longer. Takasaka Rina was deeply moved by this scene, but it was a pity that it couldn't save her. She didn't have much time left, and she could be discovered at any moment. Suddenly, a giant hand floated out from Takasaka Rina's air sword. Just like the sword, it was a giant hand formed from air. The giant hand grabbed Qingpin's waist, trying to pull Qingpin away from Gohan's chest. No, Qingpin won't leave. Qingpin won't leave Gohan. Qingpin grabbed Gohan's torn clothes. Even if the giant hand grabbed him, he wouldn't leave Gohan's side. Go away. Takasaka Rina exerted force, and Qingpin's resistance was instantly nullified. Although Qingpin had grabbed Gohan's clothes, he tore them off together with the clothes. The giant hand threw him into the forest several hundred meters away. Qingpin climbed up from the ground and looked at the distance between him and Gohan. It was several hundred meters away. Qingpin wanted to run back to Gohan's side, but the distance was too far for a corpse to cross. There were countless bushes in the way, and with Qingpin's short legs, he wouldn't be able to run back to Gohan's side without 5 or 6 minutes. After 5 or 6 minutes, Gohan would be done for. Damn it! Damn it! Tears rolled down Qingpin's cheeks like pearls. For the first time, she was angry at herself. Why did she only know how to eat, sleep, and crawl all over Gohan's body? But when Gohan needed her, she could only crawl on the grass and watch Gohan die. Qingpin felt a deep sense of regret. Gohan. Qingpin will never be someone else's sword maiden. Miku's originally soft and childish voice suddenly became so loud that it pierced through the heavens and earth. Even Reina Takasaka, who once again had her sword pressed against Gohan's chest, couldn't help but turn around to look. At the same time, Qingpin raised her Qingpin sword and stabbed herself in the heart without hesitation. This was the only way for a sword maiden to kill herself. She would use her own sword to stab her own heart. In this way, the sword lady would die. She would truly die. She would turn into the clouds in the sky and die. Reina Takasaka was shocked to see 2 clouds, one black and one white, intertwining in the sky. It looked like a Tai Chi diagram. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.